From being able to see the Great Wall from space, to Europe and Asia are separate continents, geography is full of lies, measurement mix-ups, and cartographic myths we all grew up believing. And today, I'm revealing the truth behind them. Starting off with number 50. The Everglades isn't a swamp. It's actually a very shallow, very slow river. It's called the River of Grass, and it flows from Lake Okeechobee to the Gulf of Mexico, sometimes rebranded as the Gulf of America. It only moves at around 2,000 feet per day, just over a third of a mile. The Mississippi, in comparison, rushes between 28 to 72 miles per day. But speed doesn't matter. The water moves in a specific direction and is contained by banks. So, it's a river. And once you realize rivers aren't what we think they are, it turns out we don't even agree on how they end. Number 49. Deltas and estuaries both describe rivers, but they're not interchangeable. And not every river has a delta. All deltas are estuaries, but not all estuaries are deltas. Still with me? If tides are too strong, or the river's moving too fast, that sediment never settles. No delta, still an estuary. And sometimes rivers don't end at all, they just give up. Number 48. Some rivers just rage quit, like the Okavango River in Botswana, which flows inland and then just disappears. 40,000 years ago, tectonic activity trapped the river in a trough in the desert, creating the Okavango Delta. Water pours into the area, where it either sinks into the sand or evaporates thanks to the 90 to 97 degree Fahrenheit heat. Think that's unusual? Some rivers can't even decide which direction they're supposed to go in. Number 47. In 2022, South Australia's Murray River flowed backwards, and it wasn't even the first time. In this case, a stronger water source simply bullied it into submission. When the nearby Goulburn River floods, it creates a pressure wall so strong it forces Murray's water back toward its source. Even the Mississippi has reversed course. In 2012, Hurricane Isaac dumped so much rain that the river rose 10 feet. Then the storm surge from the Gulf of America piled on top of it, literally pushing ocean water upriver for a day. If rivers can hit rivers, it shouldn't surprise anyone that some of them don't even stay on land. Number 46. Rivers aren't just found on land. There's one flowing under the Black Sea. If it was on the surface, it would be the 6th largest river in the world, just behind the Congo and the Ganges. It's formed by salty water pouring through the Bosporus Strait. Because it's denser than the surrounding water, it doesn't mix. It sinks, spreads out, and starts behaving like a river with its own current. It even has its own banks, waterfalls, and rapids. And just when you think rivers couldn't get any stranger, number 45. Think of a flowing river and that cool water washing over you. Okay, now imagine that water getting hotter and hotter. Seems unlikely, huh? Well, not in Chennai-Timpishka, the boiling river of the Amazon. Located deep in the Peruvian jungle, it's heated by geothermal sources way underground. Its average annual temperature ranges from 75 degrees Fahrenheit to 84 degrees Fahrenheit. But it gets even weirder. Some geothermal scientists have logged temperatures of over 194 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, it's not just rivers breaking the rules, entire landscapes do it too. Number 44. The Sahara is dry, warm, and it definitely doesn't snow, right? Well, snowfall was recorded in the world's most famous desert on 6 different occasions, the latest in 2022. And it's not just some flurries either. In January of 2018, 15 inches of snow fell on the dunes around Ain Sefra, Algeria. And snow isn't the only thing the Sahara does that completely messes with our mental map. Number 43. The Sahara is one of the most barren places on Earth. But it's the reason the Amazon rainforest exists. Every year, winds lift millions of tons of dust out of the Sahara and blow it across the Atlantic. The dust is packed with phosphorus, vitamins for plants. Rainforests burn through phosphorus, and the constant rains wash it out the soil. Without it, the Amazon would starve. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. My internal compass has been spinning since the intro. Ready to continue? Good. Number 42. Lightning definitely strikes the same spot twice. That's literally the point of skyscraper antennae, to attract lightning. But even without man-made structures, lightning strikes the same place all the time. Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela gets struck by lightning 260 days a year. The lake is trapped in a mountain basin. Warm, humid air rises, cold air drops, and they slam into each other. The result is a built-in storm machine that fires almost every night. And while the sky is throwing the same tantrum every night, the Earth underneath is slowly rearranging the ocean. Number 41. Sea levels may be rising, but not in the Pacific. It's actually shrinking by around 1 inch per year. The reason? The Pacific tectonic plate is sliding under the plates around it. Eventually, that means Asia and the Americas will converge into one. It also means the Atlantic Ocean is expanding. One day, there will be an Amasia continent and a massive Atlantic Ocean. And all that slow, invisible movement has a habit of showing up all at once. Number 40. The majority of earthquakes happen on fault lines. Except the word majority is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Over 90% of earthquakes happen at or near plate boundaries. Over millions of years, moving tectonic plates leave behind scars, weak spots in the Earth's crust. So, when stress from today's plate boundaries travels inward and hits one of those weak zones, the ground can suddenly snap. Imagine living thousands of miles from a fault line and still getting hit by a magnitude 7 quake. In 2017, that's how Botswana got hit by a 6.5 magnitude earthquake. And back in 1811 and 1812, the Mississippi River region was rocked by a series of quakes over magnitude 7, far from any plate edge. But not all geological surprises announce themselves with earthquakes. Fact number 39. Where are the most glaciers? Must be an Arctic region, surely. The answer? Pakistan. Northern Pakistan, specifically the region of Gilgit-Baltistan, is home to over 7,000 glaciers. 3 ranges dominate the area, including the Himalayas, the Karakoram, and the Hindu Kush. Recent studies say that the number of glaciers in Pakistan may be even higher, with the country hosting over 13,000, many of which are still unnamed. Glaciers aren't the only things geography puts in unexpected places, though. Number 38. The Dead Sea is not a sea. Okay, it was a sea 6 million years ago. Today, it's actually a very salty lake, one that's 10 times saltier than the actual ocean, with 34% salinity. It can't lose water through any means except evaporation and has no remaining connection to the ocean, so it's officially a lake. And if you think bodies of water should at least match their names, geography has other plans. Fact number 37. Seas have to have coastlines, and they do. Except for one, the Sargasso Sea. Located in the northern Atlantic Ocean, the Sargasso Sea isn't surrounded by land. It's surrounded by currents that flow circularly, known as an ocean gyre. That means the appearance, and even the life found within it, can be different than that of the water right outside of it. It's also usually calmer than the stormy Atlantic, as its circular current keeps it isolated from the tall waves and turbulent waters surrounding it. But even when water stays put, it doesn't always behave the way we expect. Number 36. Lakes are freshwater or salty, but Lake Balkhash in Kazakhstan would like a word. The western part contains mostly fresh water. It's wide and shallow, fed by melting snow from the nearby mountains. The eastern part is mostly saltwater. The rivers that feed it are full of salt water. But how come this water stays divided? Because the two sides are connected by a narrow strait that makes it hard for both salt and fresh water to mix that much. And sometimes the confusion isn't in the water at all, it's on the map. Fact number 35. There's 5 Great Lakes, except Lake Huron and Lake Michigan are actually the same thing. Seriously. They're only considered separate because of naming conventions. They're connected through the Straits of Mackinac, but the way water flows there keeps both lakes at the same level. Early explorers didn't understand the Michigan wilderness. The lakes were so enormous that Lake Huron and Lake Michigan seemed completely separate. And now, no one wants to rewrite every elementary school textbook to fix it. And if you think mislabeling a couple of lakes is wild, wait until you hear about the lakes we didn't even realize existed at all. Fact number 34. Antarctica is just a frozen landmass with over 400 lakes. One problem though, they're all buried beneath the continent's ice sheet. A handful are above ground, a couple are even ice-free, but the subglacial lakes are formed by meltwater from the ice above, trapped and then insulated from freezing conditions by the ice sheet. One of the bigger ones is almost 1.5 million years old. Scientists think other lakes could be up to 15 million years old. And Antarctica isn't the only thing hiding in plain sight. Fact number 33. Quick pop quiz. Name all the continents. Nice try, but you missed one. Zealandia. 94% of the continent is submerged. The only parts of the landmass that are visible above the water are New Zealand and New Caledonia. It's the thinnest and youngest continent, above half the size of Australia. It's so thin and dense, it's sunk lower than other continents. Once you realize we missed an entire continent, it makes you wonder what else we've misplaced. Fact number 32. Mount Everest isn't in Nepal. It's shared between Nepal and China. In fact, its peak sits right on the border between the two countries. But most people associate the world's tallest mountain with Nepal because that's where the shorter, easier hiking path to go up the mountain starts. And given how insanely difficult it is to cross the border on Everest, China has never really bothered putting checkpoints on the peak. It'd be a cool passport stamp to get though. Other mountains aren't immune to this confusion either. Fact number 31. K2 is not in the Himalayas, a mistake a lot of people make, but it's actually in the Karakoram range, which on average has a denser concentration of taller peaks than the Himalayas. From a distance, the Karakoram and Himalayas look like they're part of the same mountain range. Sometimes borders want to get in on the act too. Number 30. Take a quick look at Afghanistan on a map. Got a lot of neighbors, huh? Including China. It doesn't look like it at first glance, but thanks to the narrow Wakhan corridor, it's true. The corridor stretches between Tajikistan and Pakistan to reach China. It ranges between 16 to 60 kilometers, 10 to 37 miles in width. At its narrowest, that's just 2.5 times the Las Vegas Strip. Why is it there? The British, as usual. They were trying to prevent another war with Russia. So this small part of land was ceded to the Kingdom of Afghanistan, eliminating a direct border between the two empires. We've seen rivers that crawl like grass, vanish into deserts, reverse direction, and even flow underwater. Plus, a desert that snows and secretly keeps the Amazon alive. Geography isn't broken. It's just way less honest than we were taught. And we're not even halfway through. There's a whole lot of weird facts to come. Number 29. The border between Italy and Switzerland isn't fully fixed. Part of the border is determined by glacial ridgelines beneath the Matterhorn, but the glaciers are melting. Switzerland lost 4% of its glacial volume in 2023 and 6% in 2022. So in 2024, the two countries agreed to redraw the border. And since the melt isn't slowing down, it probably won't be the only redrawing that has to take place. So next time you book your Swiss ski holiday, be prepared to possibly wake up in Italy instead. Of course, not every border problem is about where the line is drawn. Number 28. Not every country has its own border control. Just ask Liechtenstein, which has offloaded its visa policy entirely to Switzerland. All imports and exports are handled according to Swiss rules, and as of 2011, there's no border control between the two countries as they both joined the Schengen zone. While that sounds like two friendly countries helping each other out, it does cause some problems. No border checks meant criminals could move assets a lot easier, and let's face it, Liechtenstein's banks are pretty attractive if you're hiding a whole lot of cash, and when borders get fuzzy, clocks tend to follow. Fact number 27. You can be in two time zones at once, assuming you're in Nicosia, the only divided capital in the world. After the invasion of Cyprus in 1974, Turkey continues to occupy the northeastern side of the island. A UN-controlled buffer zone allows Greek and Turkish Cypriots to pass back and forth between the two territories, and this causes a problem. Because Turkey doesn't observe daylight savings time, and the official Republic of Cyprus does. So Nicosia has the same time during the summer, but in the winter, you better make sure you know which side you have an appointment on, because you could show up a full hour late. Borders causing problems isn't new. Sometimes they were wrong from the start. Number 26. School kids in the US learned that the country doesn't extend above the 49th parallel, the latitude line agreed on as the US-Canada border about 2 centuries ago. But that's not true. It's all because of a map-making mistake known as the Northwest Angle. In northern Minnesota, the Northwest Angle is cut off from the rest of the US by the Lake of the Woods. To reach it, you have to pass through Canada. Why? Surveyors in the 1780s dropped the ball and misjudged the geography of the region's lakes and wilderness. Borders don't just cause scheduling problems, they nearly cause wars. Fact number 25. 3 tiny, mostly uninhabited islands in the Beagle Channel nearly sparked a war. An 1881 treaty between Argentina and Chile left their southern border vague, and both later wanted Atlantic access. In 1977, international arbitration ruled the islands belonged to Chile. Argentina rejected the ruling and deployed troops. Things got so tense that the Pope got involved. The dispute was finally settled in 1984, with the islands going to Chile and maritime rights to Argentina, averting war. Then there's the countries that fight over borders that don't even stick around. Number 24, if you feel bad about making geography mistakes, don't worry. India and Bangladesh mistakenly fought over a few tiny islands for decades until they completely disappeared. Newmore and South Tapati Island were formed by the Bola cyclone in 1970, and both countries wanted control of them. But they turned out to be silt deposits that eroded into nothing in the 2010s. That didn't stop the Permanent Court of Arbitration awarding ownership of the islands to India in 2014, but it was already too late. But not every strange border shifts or fades away. Some are frozen in place. Fact number 23. The DMZ that divides North and South Korea isn't no man's land. There are actually 2 villages in the 2.5-mile buffer zone, one in each country. The North Korean town is called Kijongdong. The South Korean town is called Daeseongdong. Freedom Village. Life in Freedom Village is hard. The population is just under 200 people. Villagers are shadowed by South Korean soldiers. They also have a strict midnight to sunrise curfew and must answer a roll call every night. Getting visits is exceptionally hard, with visitors needing approval at least 2 weeks in advance. So why live there? Well, South Korea has given the villagers perks, like exemptions from mandatory military service and tax cuts. In some parts of the world, borders aren't lines at all. Fact number 22. Western Sahara's borders don't really exist. Its northern boundary with Morocco is disputed, and inside the territory, the real division isn't a line at all. It's a 1,700-mile sand wall. Called the Berm, it's laced with trenches, barbed wire, and landmines, which, in practice, works far better as a border than any line on a map. Of course, some borders only exist because countries decided to stop being separate in the first place. Fact number 21. Australia wasn't a British colony. It was 6. Up until January 1st, 1901, Australia was made up of self-governing British colonies. These were New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia, and Tasmania. They each had their own parliaments, laws, railway system, and taxes. Regional leaders eventually realized that internal trade barriers and fragmented defense would weaken the newly independent colonies, so they chose to team up instead. Even when borders disappear, history still decides who speaks what on either side. Fact number 20. Brazil isn't the only South American country that doesn't speak Spanish. The official language of Guyana is English, and Suriname is Dutch. Suriname was a Dutch colony since 1667, only gaining independence in 1975. Though the Dutch had also settled their first English-speaking Guyana became a British colony from 1831 to 1966. It remains the only English-speaking country in South America. South America's geography plays just as many tricks as language does, though. Fact number 19. Europe's largest national park isn't located on the continent. The Guiana Amazonian Park is located in the French Guiana and covers over almost 13,000 square miles, 41% of the region. It's so remote that it can't be reached from the coast. Access is only possible by small aircraft or by boat along the Moroni or Oyapock rivers. From one of the most isolated parks on Earth to one of the most misidentified landmarks on it. Fact number 18. Most people confuse London's Tower Bridge for the famous London Bridge. Built between 1886 and 1894, Tower Bridge is much more stately and impressive looking than the relatively simple-looking London Bridge, a flat concrete and steel bridge over several arches. But even this London Bridge isn't the original London Bridge. The original one, built in 1831, has been dismantled and carefully reconstructed stone by stone in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. It couldn't support London's heavy modern traffic anymore, so the City of London sold it in the 1960s, and its reconstruction in Arizona was completed in 1971. And speaking of things people think they understand, engineering is full of misconceptions too. Fact number 17. Canals don't always need locks to get ships across. The Suez Canal doesn't have locks. Why? Because the seas it connects, the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, are at the same level. That happens because the land in the area of the canal is mostly flat, as opposed to the Panama Canal, where the waterway crosses a continental divide. The difference between the Panama Canal's two endpoints, the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, is about half the height of a bowling pin. But the real elevation change via locks is around 85 feet thanks to the land along the isthmus. So sometimes geography keeps things level on purpose. Other times, it lies straight to your face. Fact number 16. Miami's not that hot. The city has actually never registered a temperature above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Sea breezes from the surrounding Atlantic Ocean and Caribbean Sea moderate the city's temperatures, but the humidity makes things toasty. It averages 60 to 70% during the winter months and a staggering 80 to 90% during the summer months. It's in the only tropical area of the contiguous US, and 90 degrees Fahrenheit with 80% humidity feels like 113 degrees Fahrenheit. So no matter what the thermometer says, you're gonna sweat your body weight the minute you step outside. But you're about to see, climate doesn't just shape weather. It rewrites migration, borders, and history. Number 15. The Sahara wasn't always a desert. Scientists believe it goes through 21,000-year cycles where it gets green and then desertifies, again and again and again. This relates to the wobbling of the Earth's orbit, which affects the African monsoon. When the monsoon strengthens, the increased rainfall transforms the Sahara into green grasslands. When it wanes, it reverts back to a desert. Researchers now believe that the original Stone Age migration of humans across the Sahara into present-day Europe occurred because the Green Sahara allowed them to cross. And nowhere is that more obvious than in places we think of as extreme. Number 14. India isn't just a hot, humid country full of big cities and rainforests. In fact, it has 6 different climate regions. This includes alpine conditions in the Himalayan states like Himachal Pradesh and Kashmir, and arid conditions in the Thar Desert region. Weirdly enough, it's also one of the most densely populated deserts on Earth. It has between 207 and 215 people per square mile, compared to most other desert regions' average of 18 people per square mile. Let's move from climate confusion to political borders. Fact number 13. Even though the UN headquarters lie within the city limits of New York City, they aren't technically in the US. The headquarters are international territory with their own security force, owned by the United Nations. The 18 acres the UN sits on cannot be entered by US law enforcement without consent from the UN itself. That applies to federal, state, and local officials and law enforcement. The idea is to protect the special international status of the political body and the building it's headquartered in. If a crime does happen, UN security responds first and then usually coordinates with the NYPD. However, some UN officials have diplomatic immunity. That means there's a building in Manhattan where the law stops at the front door, and accountability depends entirely on who's sitting inside. And sometimes, autonomy exists on paper and nowhere else. Fact number 12. While people believe it is a separate entity, Hong Kong is no longer truly autonomous. While it historically functioned as a semi-autonomous special administrative region, the Chinese government has placed it more firmly under its control since 2020. Legal changes in 2021 allowed China to block political participation of groups Beijing did not approve of. So when elections for Hong Kong's next chief executive happened on May 8, 2022, China's preferred candidate, John Lee, ended up with more than 99% of the vote. And he was the only one allowed to run. Colonial maps don't always tell the truth, even when the empire technically never left. Fact number 11. While most people may think otherwise, Martinique, Réunion, and French Guiana aren't French colonies. They're just France. They're subject to the same laws with the same voice, representation, financial systems, and currency. Well, theoretically, at least. locals complain that their voices aren't taken as seriously by the French government. In September of 2024, thousands of people in Martinique took to the streets to protest rising prices. France deployed riot police to handle the uprising. Up to this point, we've seen deserts packed with people, global institutions sitting outside national law, cities that aren't as hot as their reputations, and entire regions that are legally part of countries most people think they're separate from. We've hit the top 10, and the world is far stranger than it looks on a map. Fact number 10. It's a now disproven myth that you can see the Great Wall of China from space. But did you know that there are some geographical features that are so big you can only see them from space? The Richat structure in the Sahara Desert cannot be seen from the ground. Known as the Eye of the Sahara, it's made up of a bunch of concentric blue-tinted circles measuring around 28 miles across, as big as 5 Mount Everests laid down base to tip. If you were on the ground in Mauritania, all you'd see is a bunch of small dark rocks scattered across the desert. Once you zoom out far enough to see things like that, Earth itself starts to look very different. Fact number 9. The Earth is actually really smooth. Although we see a landscape full of deep oceans and soaring mountains, compared to the entire size of the planet, these differences are nothing. In fact, Earth is smoother than a billiard ball, but some surprises are much closer to home. Number 8. Europe isn't just temperate and tundra-ish. It has a desert. The Tabernas Desert is the only one on the continent, and it's located in Almeria, Spain. It's partly what allowed spaghetti westerns to be filmed in Europe. Tabernas could stand in for the huge arid deserts of the American West. Over 300 movies were shot here, and some film sets are still left standing for tourists to visit. Game of Thrones shot an episode in the Tabernas, as did Black Mirror. Europe's geography isn't just strange because of climate. Borders complicate it even more. Number 7. Spain isn't just close to Morocco. Some of it is surrounded by Morocco, thanks to the exclaves of Ceuta and Melilla. These little-known Spanish protectorates are on the northern coast of Morocco, and they've been Spanish in some form or another since the 15th century. They also have the European Union's only land borders with Africa. They were important port cities for trade between Africa and Europe, but today, local unemployment is still more than 30%. Still, people cross the border from Morocco into them to earn a living, creating tensions at the border. Some borders matter a lot less, depending on where you're standing. Fact number 6. There actually is a place on Earth where citizens of almost any country can live and work visa-free, if you're willing to brave the cold and polar bears of Svalbard, that is. And it's not just the frozen environments and wildlife that wants to eat you that poses a problem. There are a few other hiccups. First, you can only enter Svalbard through Norway. You also need a job, or the ability to support yourself. And considering Svalbard has a population of between 2,600 and 3,000, and is located way up in the Arctic tundra, jobs aren't that easy to come by. Or housing. But if you can get a job and house lined up, all you have to deal with is months of darkness and below freezing temperatures for most of the year. There are still places on Earth, though, where borders barely exist at all. Fact number 5. 7 countries claim different parts of Antarctica, but not all the territory is claimed. There's a massive no man's land known as Marie Byrd Island. It stretches over 620,000 square miles, 4 times the size of California. It's the largest unclaimed territory on Earth. Part of the reason is its extreme isolation. Even by Antarctic standards, it's remote, the farthest point from any other continent, and so inhospitable that when Admiral Richard E. Byrd flew over it in 1929 and named it after his wife, his crew couldn't even land to set up camp. Even in the most remote places on the planet, the ground itself isn't done doing weird things. Fact number 4. Volcanoes don't just spew lava. The mud volcanoes of Azerbaijan spit out, you guessed it, mud. 350 of the world's 700 mud volcanoes are in Azerbaijan's Gobustan National Park. They average about 33 feet in diameter. Much smaller than a regular volcano, but they can occasionally reach heights of 2,300 feet, twice the height of the Eiffel Tower. Strangest of all, the mud bubbling out of a mud volcano is usually cold to the touch. I said usually. don't go around sticking your fingers in all of them to double check it. And now, it's time for the top 3. Early maps of the South China Sea misidentified some reefs as islands. No biggie, right? Except this geographic mistake might lead to actual war. China, Vietnam, and other countries have been claiming them as their respective land, sometimes even building fake islands over them to strengthen their claims in the South China Sea. Most of this building is centered on the Spratly and Paracel Islands, where since 2013, China has created at least 3,200 acres of new land. If fake islands can push countries toward conflict, wait until you see what happens when someone redraws a border for millions of people. Fact number 2. You'd think a lot of care goes into drawing political borders, but a lot of times it's literally a random guy given a map. Case in point, the divide between India and Pakistan. Known as the Radcliffe Line, it divided up communities, infrastructure, and even waterways. This caused issues with road systems, communication, and irrigation. Between 500,000 and 1 million people died in both countries, and 10 to 12 million people had to cross the border in Punjab and Bengal to escape the chaos. Why was the line drawn so badly and unnaturally? Because it was drawn by a lawyer, Cyril Radcliffe, that had never once stepped foot in the area before being given the somewhat important task of splitting up 2 countries. But the British were always a little casual about borders. Fact number 1. On March 1st, 2025, the unthinkable happened. Symbolically, the sun finally set on the British Empire. The freeze came about in the first place because the UK had control of so many territories and colonies around the world. That meant there was always a place where the sun was shining on the UK, no matter the time of day. But the UK has let go of most of its colonies. The sun continued to shine on the Pitcairn Islands and parts of the British Atlantic Territory for the next few months, until the spring equinox on March 20th. The South Pole was plunged in darkness, and at 10:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:50 a.m. in London, the sun literally set on the British Empire. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack. Think you know America? Think again. From towns you've never heard of to distances you'll never guess. These are the US geography slip-ups Europeans always make. And, well, plenty of Americans, too. And if you're into these weekly map dives, hit subscribe. My group chat has already muted me for ranking European peninsulas. Number 50. America is big. It's huge. It's easy to look at a map and think the US and the European Union are around the same size, but you'd be wrong. The United States is roughly 3.8 million square miles, 9.8 million square kilometers, nearly twice the size of the EU's 1.6 million, 4.2 million square kilometers. Texas alone can swallow any EU country whole and still have room to spare. And if you want that dream American road trip, you better fill up on gas. New York City to San Francisco is over 2,900 miles, almost 4,700 kilometers. That's like driving from Vienna to Lisbon and back again. That sheer size makes America a land of extremes. Scorching deserts, snow-capped mountains, vast plains, and packed cities, all crammed into one country. And speaking of size, number 49, ask most people the biggest US state and they'll say Texas because, well, everything's supposed to be bigger in the Lone Star State. Wrong. Texas is big, but Alaska. It's twice the size and larger than France, Spain, and Germany combined. Texas clocks in at about 270,000 square miles, almost 700,000 square kilometers, but Alaska absolutely dwarfs it, packing in over 656,000 square miles, 1.7 million square kilometers. But despite all that space, Alaska is practically empty. Just over 700,000 people live there, fewer than in Brussels. So it's basically a country-sized wilderness with the population of a mid-tier European city. Number 48, when Europeans think about the Mississippi River, 2 things come to mind: how to spell it and its length. It often gets compared to the Danube, like they're in the same league. The Mississippi runs approximately 2,400 miles, 3,800 kilometers, making it nearly 600 miles, 1,000 kilometers longer than the Danube, which runs about 1,800 miles, 2,900 kilometers from Germany to the Black Sea. The Mississippi drains about 40% of the continental U.S. That's like rolling most of Europe's rivers into one. It's a river that shapes America's heartland, carrying barges loaded with grain, feeding farms with irrigation, and occasionally wiping out towns with floods. Yet, for many Europeans, it still gets brushed off as just America's version of the Danube. Number 47. European capitals or regional centers tend to be the largest and most prominent cities in the country. The US does things its own way. California's capital? Sacramento. Not LA, because size and movie stars don't win you the crown. North Carolina's capital is Raleigh, even though Charlotte calls the shots economically and culturally. And Illinois, its capital is Little Springfield. No, not the Simpsons one, while Chicago sits on the sidelines. In Europe, capitals usually hog the spotlight. Politics, money, and culture all crammed into one city. In the US, capitals were often chosen for history or compromise, not size. It's part of that federal habit of spreading power around instead of letting one city take all the glory. Number 46. Unlike Europe, where centuries-old towns are still buzzing with life, the US is scattered with ghost towns, literally thousands of them. These were boom towns that shot up almost overnight during mining rushes or railroad pushes. As the gold, silver, or jobs dried up, people bailed. Think of Europe's old market towns. If half of them had been abandoned and left to rot the moment the fairs, feasts, and public executions stopped. Take Bodie, California. In the 1880s, it had saloons on every corner and a reputation for wild shootouts. But once the mines went silent, the town emptied so fast meals were left on tables, completely untouched. Kinda like my mom's Thanksgiving dinners. Number 45. Russia might span 11 time zones, but the US holds its own. Counting territories, America officially stretches across 6 different time zones. The mainland alone runs on 4, Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Pacific, and that's before you add Alaska and Hawaii Aleutian, which have their own zones. Toss in places like Puerto Rico and Guam, and the list gets even longer. For Europeans used to zipping across a continent mostly in 1 or 2 time zones, it's a shock to the system. In the US, flying coast to coast can mean losing 3 or 4 hours on the clock. It's like taking off in London and landing in Moscow, without ever leaving one country. And if you think that's wild, wait until you hear about the Appalachians, but we'll get there soon. Number 44. Europeans often picture the US as non-stop city life. New York, LA, and skyscrapers on every corner, but out west in states like Nevada, Montana, and Wyoming, more like empty stretches of land and a lot of cows. Nevada, for instance, is about 5 times bigger than Belgium, but with a population of around 3 million. That's the same as the capital of Portugal, Lisbon. Out west, the land just stretches forever. Deserts, jagged mountains, and national parks where you can drive for hours without spotting a single house. It's less Europe, more Siberia. In Europe, every patch of land gets carved up by towns and farms. In the American West, it's just big skies, open roads, and a whole lot of nothing. Something most Europeans can't quite wrap their heads around. Number 43. California is a powerhouse. Nearly 40 million people, about the same as Poland, call it home. Its $4.1 trillion GDP would make it the world's 4th largest economy, slotting in just behind Germany and ahead of Japan. And in size, California's 164,000 square miles, 425,000 square kilometers, put it on par with Sweden. In one state, you've got snow-capped Sierra Nevada peaks, scorching deserts, fertile valleys, and megacities. Europeans sometimes picture the US as all the same, but California feels like its own continent. Mediterranean coastlines, alpine mountains, and desert frontiers mashed together. All it's missing is a medieval castle or two. Number 42. Let's talk measurements, because this is where Europeans really get whiplash. In the US, it's miles instead of kilometers, feet and inches instead of meters, gallons at the gas pump, and Fahrenheit on the weather report. So when Europeans see 30 degrees Celsius, they think scorching hot. Americans call the same thing 86 degrees Fahrenheit, which to some may sound like, maybe bring a sweater. It's the kind of mismatch that makes road trips, forecasts, and even ordering a soda feel like a puzzle. Europe sticks to one clean, system. America, it's still clinging to its own. Part tradition, part stubbornness, and maybe just a little bit of, we like being difficult. Number 41. Canada gets all the fame as the land of lakes, but the US is stacked with them too, over 102,000 in total. Minnesota alone brags about being the land of 10,000 lakes, and some of those aren't just backyard ponds, they're massive freshwater seas. The Great Lakes, like Michigan and Superior, are so big they make whole European countries look like puddles. Lake Superior is bigger than Belgium or the Netherlands. This network of lakes plays a crucial role in America's ecology, economy, and recreation. Europeans often don't realize how much water defines US life until they realize some Americans own more boats than cars. So yeah, America is twice the size of Europe. Alaska makes Texas look like a starter pack, and the Mississippi is so massive it makes the Danube look like a hotel fountain. And we're just getting started. Number 40. Unlike European cities like Paris or Berlin, which sit inside larger regions, Washington, D.C. was built as its own federal district. That's so no single state could bully the national government. It's tiny, just 68 square miles, 177 square kilometers, way smaller than sprawling capitals like London or Rome. But within that small patch, you've got the White House, the Capitol, and the Supreme Court, the entire nerve center of American politics. Its very existence shows how differently the US does things compared to Europe, where capitals usually sprouted out of old kingdoms and historic regions. Number 39. In Europe, mountains aren't just for skiing or snapping selfies, they often double as borders between countries. In the US, the Rockies don't divide, they dominate. This massive range runs thousands of kilometers from New Mexico up through Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, and Montana. The Rockies form the Continental Divide, where rivers split east toward the Atlantic and Gulf of America, formerly known as the Gulf of Mexico, or west toward the Pacific. They impact weather, wildlife migrations, and even decide where people can live. In short, they don't just sit on the map, they run the show. Number 38. Europeans, and even some Americans, often assume New York City is the capital of New York State. Nope, that honor goes to Albany. With around 100,000 people, it's tiny compared to NYC's 8.5 million. Albany proves that size doesn't matter. It's where the legislature meets and the governor hangs his hat. In that way, it's a bit like Luxembourg City or Ljubljana in Europe. Small capitals flexing on everyone else. It's another reminder that US states often keep their politics and their money in different places. Number 37. Central Europe is known for its green valleys tucked between towering mountain ranges, the Rhine Gorge, the Danube Valley, usually 1,000 to 3,300 feet, 300 to 1,000 meters deep. Impressive, sure, but the Grand Canyon? Whole different league. At its deepest, it plunges more than 5,900 feet, 1,800 meters, and runs almost 280 miles, 450 kilometers long. Carved by the Colorado River over millions of years, the Grand Canyon drops into a raw, dry, almost alien landscape. Europe's valleys feel cozy by comparison. The Grand Canyon feels like the earth just cracked open. You don't really get it until you're standing on the rim, with your knees wobbling. Number 36. Miami is closer to Havana than it is to New York. It's just 230 miles, 370 kilometers across the water to Cuba, but nearly 1,200 miles, 1,900 kilometers up the coast to New York. That closeness shapes Miami's food, culture, and vibe. More tropical and Latin America than anything you'll find up north. For Europeans used to short hops between countries, it's a surprise to learn Miami's real neighbor isn't New York, it's Havana. New York might send tourists. Cuba sends the flavor. Number 35. Europe barely has deserts. The only true one is Spain's Little Tabernas. The American Southwest, a whole different story. The Mojave Desert alone sprawls across nearly 48,000 square miles, 124,000 square kilometers. That's bigger than Greece or Bulgaria, and it's just one desert. Add the Sonoran and the Great Basin, and you've got hundreds of thousands more. But they're not empty voids. They're alive with unique plants and animals, dotted with towns, and home to icons like Joshua Tree and Death Valley. Many Europeans don't realize how deserts play an important role in the US, far from being empty wastelands. They're a defining part of the country's geography and character. Plus, they're some of the only places where running into a cactus is a genuine travel hazard. Number 34. Hawaii is pretty lonely. Sitting nearly 2,400 miles, 3,800 kilometers southwest of California, it's planted in the middle of the Pacific, about 2/3 of the way to Japan. This is farther than the distance from Glasgow, Scotland to Moscow. And its isolation is basically its whole personality. And that's not a bad thing. It shaped everything from culture to climate to wildlife, mixing Polynesian roots with US influence. Yet plenty of Europeans think Hawaii is just off California's coast, right up until they're 5.5 hours into a flight stuck next to a screaming baby. So much for that relaxing getaway. Number 33. The Appalachian Mountains are basically the pensioners of America's mountain ranges. At over 480 million years old, they make Europe's Alps, just 65 million years old, look like toddlers. Once taller than today's Rockies, the Appalachians have been worn down over ages of erosion into the rolling hills and modest peaks we see now. Unlike the still-growing Alps or Rockies, these mountains are long past their growth spurt. To Europeans, they might look small, but they're among the oldest landscapes on Earth. Number 32. Europe has its headliner islands, like Sicily, Corsica, or the Greek Isles. The US might not have the same Mediterranean glamour, but it's secretly an island hoarder, with thousands scattered across lakes, rivers, and oceans. Some, like the Great Lakes archipelagos, are so big they could pass for small European countries. Others, like Washington's San Juans, feel more like cozy villages dropped into the sea. Along the Atlantic and Gulf coasts, barrier islands act like speed bumps for hurricanes, protecting the mainland while hosting beach towns that look one storm away from vanishing. Most of these islands barely show up on standard maps, but each comes with its own quirks, like tiny outposts where the ferry doubles as the school bus. They're hidden pieces of America's geography most Europeans never hear about. Number 31. In Europe, geography usually means countries with borders, flags, and centuries of history. In the US, it's a bit fuzzier. Regions have names like the Midwest, the South, New England, or the Pacific Northwest. They're not political lines, just cultural shorthand. So Illinois counts as Midwest, while Texas flies the flag of the South. And those two couldn't be more different in climate, culture, or economy. It's America's way of making sense of a huge, mixed-up landscape. Think of it like Europe ditching borders and just calling France the wine belt or Scotland the cold, rainy bit. So America's the place where Albany beats New York to be capital, the Grand Canyon makes Europe's valleys look like ditches, and Hawaii turns out to be halfway to Tokyo instead of next to California. Of course it is. Remember, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's finish this ride together. Number 30. Some Europeans picture the US and Russia as worlds apart, but they're basically neighbors. In the Bering Strait, the Diomede Islands sit just 2.4 miles, 3.8 kilometers apart. Little Diomede for the US, Big Diomede for Russia. You can literally stand on one and wave at the other, though you'd be waving across the international dateline, so technically you're greeting someone tomorrow. In winter, the water freezes enough that you could, in theory, walk between the two, though it's probably not a great idea unless you like international incidents. Number 29. Death Valley in California doesn't just get hot, it also goes low. At 282 feet 86 meters below sea level, it's the lowest point in North America. Europe's lowest spot, the Caspian Depression in Russia, bottoms out at 92 feet 28 meters below sea level. Death Valley is a sun-baked furnace, famous for record-breaking heat and landscapes that look more Mars than Earth. It's one of those places where the valleys beat the mountains for drama, and where your car's AC better not quit on you. Number 28. Europe is dotted with crystal-clear freshwater lakes, some fed by glaciers. Utah's Great Salt Lake? Total opposite. Its salinity can hit 10 times that of the ocean. Basically the Dead Sea draped in stars and stripes. The lake grows and shrinks with the seasons, sometimes ballooning to almost 1,700 square miles, 4,400 square kilometers, bigger than Berlin. It's teeming with brine shrimp, packed with migratory birds, and even turning pink when microbes bloom. And don't worry if you can't swim. You'll float, whether you like it or not. Number 27. Wyoming, the least populated US state. It's got less than 600,000 residents, fewer than Luxembourg, but it's bigger than the entire United Kingdom. That means wide open spaces where the population density is so low, you're more likely to bump into a moose than a neighbor. And it's not just Wyoming. Vermont and even Alaska have populations on par with tiny European states. For Europeans used to tightly packed towns and cities, it's jarring. Here you can drive for hours without seeing another human being. In America's emptiest corners, rush hour is just a tumbleweed rolling across the road. Number 26. If you're a fan of bling, grab a shovel and head to Arkansas. Crater of Diamonds State Park is one of the only diamond-producing sites on Earth open to the public. Visitors hunt for gems like amethyst, jasper, and diamonds, and whatever you find, you keep. That's wildly different from the rest of the world, where diamond mining is industrial, fenced off, and locked down. Here specifically, it's a tourist attraction. 91 acres, 37 hectares of dirt, where anyone can strike it lucky. For Europeans used to diamonds sitting behind glass cases in Brussels or Antwerp, the idea of kids pulling them out of the mud feels very American. It's a fun family day out, with the possibility of an early retirement. Number 25. Alaska is the most western state in the contiguous USA, and it's the most eastern. The Aleutian Islands stretch so far west they actually cross the 180th meridian, meaning a sliver of the US technically sits in the eastern hemisphere. It's one of the only places on Earth where going east from America literally takes you into the east. That's not Alaska's only geography trick. Parts of the state are closer to Russia than to its own capital, Juneau. In other words, Alaskans could get to Siberia quicker than they could drive to their governor's office. You know, if there wasn't an ocean in the way. Number 24. Driving across Texas isn't a road trip, it's an odyssey. From El Paso in the west to Texarkana in the east is about 820 miles, 1,300 kilometers. That's nearly the same as Paris to Warsaw, a trip that takes you through multiple countries in Europe. In Texas, you're still in the same state, probably still arguing about what to order at the next barbecue stop. It's a reminder of just how massive some US states are, bigger than whole clusters of European nations combined. Number 23. Lake Superior lives up to its name. Covering almost 32,000 square miles, almost 83,000 square kilometers, it's the largest freshwater lake on Earth by surface area. That makes it bigger than Austria or the Czech Republic. Superior kicks up storms, sudden weather shifts, and waves over 30 feet 9 meters high, conditions Europeans don't usually associate with a lake. Straddling the US and Canada, it holds about 10% of the world's unfrozen surface freshwater, a vital resource that supports drinking water, commercial fishing, recreation, and biodiversity. It's more like a sea than a lake. Number 22. Europe packs dozens of countries, languages, and cultures across an entire continent. The US does the same, but spread across one country. A trip from New York to San Francisco takes you through all kinds of climates. Humid subtropical in the southeast, blizzards in the Midwest, and Mediterranean sunshine on California's coast. And it's not just weather. Accents, food, traditions, even politics shift dramatically, just about as much as crossing European borders. The South gave the world jazz and soul, the West cranks out billion-dollar tech startups, and in between, you'll find everything from deep dish pizza to cowboy rodeos. It's a reminder that America isn't one culture. It's a patchwork quilt stitched together, sometimes neatly, sometimes not. Number 21. Think of the Everglades, and you might think of gators. But this is no ordinary swamp. It's a subtropical wetland sprawling across 3,000 square miles, 7,777 square kilometers. Imagine slow-moving rivers of grass, mangroves twisting through the water, and wildlife ranging from alligators to manatees to flocks of exotic birds. European wetlands, by comparison, tend to be smaller, cooler, and tamer. The Everglades is warm, wild, and swampy. This ecosystem filters water, helps control floods, and shelters endangered species. For many Europeans, its sheer size and biodiversity come as a shock. After all, most hikes don't involve checking if you're on the menu for an alligator. Only in America can you wave at Russia across tomorrow, mine diamonds like it's a school field trip, and still be stuck in Texas, arguing over barbecue. And we've still got more facts to come. Number 20. Europe has its celebrity volcanoes, Etna, Vesuvius, but Alaska has the numbers. With over 130 active ones, most cluster along the Aleutian Islands and the Alaska Peninsula, part of the infamous Pacific Ring of Fire. Eruptions like Mount Redoubt have blasted ash clouds thousands of kilometers and even grounded planes. And Mount St. Helens, just down in Washington, blew so hard in 1980 it took the top off the mountain. In Europe, volcanoes do make good tourist stops. In Alaska, they make your flight schedule a gamble. Number 19. From the towering hoodoos of Bryce Canyon in Utah to the delicate arches of Arches National Park, America is packed with rock formations you won't find anywhere in Europe. Millions of years of erosion, sediment, and volcanic tantrums sculpted landscapes. The Badlands in South Dakota are a highlight, jagged buttes and spires exposing layer after layer of fossilized history. Compared to Europe's more stable, predictable landforms, these places feel wild, colorful, and downright alien, leaving many Europeans wondering if they accidentally booked a trip to Mars. Number 18. Founded by the Spanish in 1565, St. Augustine is the oldest continuously inhabited European settlement on the US mainland. Sure, that's nothing next to Europe's capitals with Roman ruins in their basements, but it still beats the United States itself by over 200 years. Unlike Europe's cities, which grew slowly, many American cities popped up fast around colonial outposts like St. Augustine. Head west and you'll find Santa Fe, founded in 1610. It's the oldest state capital in the country. Its history blends Spanish colonial roots with Native American traditions. While Europe does ancient, America does colonial startup. Number 17. Stretching roughly 5,500 miles, 8,900 kilometers, the US-Canada border dwarfs any European counterpart. For comparison, the border between France and Spain spans just 387 miles, 620 kilometers. The massive border cuts across forests, lakes, prairies, and even Inuit Arctic lands, and yet it's mostly unfortified. It's the longest peaceful border on Earth. People literally commute between countries on a daily basis. It's so chill, you could cross from one side to the other while holding your coffee. Number 16. Think America is all wide open spaces? Not in New Jersey. With around 1,300 people per square mile, 502 per square kilometer, it's denser than Denmark or Hungary. Nearly 9.5 million people are crammed into this small state, which feels less like land of the free and more like land of the claustrophobic. In short, New Jersey isn't farmland America. It's rush hour Europe, but with better bagels. Number 15. The US is laced with continental divides, natural lines that decide which ocean a river ends up in. The most famous is the Great Divide, slicing from New Mexico through the Rockies into Canada, sending some rivers west to the Pacific and others east to the Atlantic. But there are others. Northern Alaska drains into the Arctic, while Utah's Great Basin rivers don't make it anywhere. They just fizzle out into salty lakes or vanish underground. Europe's system, way simpler. Most rivers head for the Atlantic, the North Sea, or the Mediterranean. America's rivers wander like lost tourists. Europe's flow like they actually read the map. Number 14. We've talked a lot about the US's size, but it's seriously huge. Take the Great Plains, an uninterrupted grassland covering about 1.1 million square miles, 2.82 million square kilometers. That's bigger than most European countries combined. Stretching from Canada down into Texas, it's the kind of endless flat horizon many Europeans have never seen. The plains shaped American agriculture and history, but their sheer scale can feel surreal. For visitors used to Europe's rolling landscapes, it's less pleasant countryside drive and more "are we there yet?" on repeat. Number 13. The US officially recognizes 574 Native American tribes. Each has its own languages, cultures, and traditions spread across the country. The Navajo Nation alone is about the size of West Virginia, while smaller tribes span the Northeast and Alaska. These nations hold sovereignty rights, self-governance, control over their lands, something almost unheard of in Europe, where only a handful of minorities have official status. But that recognition came after centuries of forced removals, broken treaties, and survival against the odds. Yet, many Europeans still overlook this reality, picturing America as highways, cities, and landscapes, while forgetting the hundreds of nations within the nation. Number 12. Europe zips between cities on high-speed rail. The US, it flies. With huge distances and limited passenger rail, planes are the only practical way to cover ground fast. Millions of Americans board domestic flights daily, bouncing between hubs like Chicago, Atlanta, New York, and LA. Geography plays a big role. Major cities are separated by hundreds or even thousands of miles, and the train system just can't compete. Europe's dense rail web keeps air travel secondary, but in the US, Amtrak and regional lines are slow, limited, and often feel like afterthoughts. So while Europeans might hop a train for convenience, Americans head for the airport. Flying is woven into US travel culture, part necessity, part habit. Just make sure you get used to hearing that your flight is delayed. Number 11. One of America's strangest natural wonders hides in Death Valley, California. Here, massive rocks, some weighing hundreds of pounds, mysteriously moonwalk across the flat surface of Racetrack Playa. For decades, nobody knew how. No people, no animals, no tricks, just rocks on the move. But scientists recently cracked the mystery. Under rare, cold conditions, thin sheets of ice form, and with a good push from the wind, the stones glide slowly across the playa. We're down to the top 10, and we've already toured states packed tighter than Europe, rivers that can't pick an ocean, and plains that stretch like an endless screensaver. Ready for some more? Number 10. The Four Corners is the only place in the US where 4 states, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico, hang out together. There's even a marker where visitors can sprawl out, a hand or foot in each state at once. It's one of those rare occasions where borders were drawn as straight lines of latitude and longitude instead of following rivers or mountains. Europe's borders are different. They're shaped by history, wars, and natural features. Number 9. Maine is the oddball of US geography. While most states rub shoulders with half a dozen neighbors, Maine only has one state friend, New Hampshire. The rest is ocean on one side and Canada on the other. That setup gives Maine a split personality. To the southeast, its Atlantic coastline is all fishing villages, lighthouses, and postcard harbors. To the north and west, it shares long borders with Quebec and New Brunswick, tying it closely to Canada. It's the only US state where you can eat world-class lobster rolls by the sea one day and drive a few hours inland to find road signs switching to French. Number 8. Kentucky's Mammoth Cave lives up to its name. It's the longest cave system on Earth, with more than 426 miles, 685 kilometers of mapped passageways, and explorers are still adding new sections. No European cave system comes close. Inside is an underground labyrinth of twisting tunnels, vast chambers and rivers packed with stalactites, stalagmites, and even fossils of ancient creatures. It's even a UNESCO World Heritage Site, attracting countless visitors every year. The rumors of mole people are unconfirmed, though. Number 7. In Florida's Everglades and southern wetlands, rotting plants have an important job. They release natural oils that spread across the water's surface. When sunlight hits, those oils create shimmering, rainbow-like reflections, turning swamp water into liquid tie-dye. For first-time visitors, the effect looks like pollution, but it's the opposite. Unlike the oily slicks Europeans might expect from an American factory spill, these rainbow pools are signs of a thriving ecosystem. Number 6. New Orleans is one of America's oldest and most recognizable cities. Shaped by French and Spanish colonial rule, it joined the US in 1803, and that influence still lingers. Wrought iron balconies, colorful Creole townhouses, and the winding streets of the French Quarter give it a look unlike anywhere else in the country. Cajun and Creole dialects mix French, African, and American influences into something you won't hear anywhere else. And the food! Gumbo, jambalaya, beignets, history lessons you can eat. Then there's the music. Jazz was born here, blues and brass bands thrive here, and the city's soundtrack spills straight into the streets. Europe built castles. New Orleans, they built good times. Number 5. Michigan is a state split in two. The upper and lower peninsulas are separated by the Straits of Mackinac. Few U.S. states have this kind of double life. The two halves are stitched together by the Mackinac Bridge, a suspension giant stretching nearly 5 miles 8 kilometers and ranking among the longest in the world. Michigan also sits at the heart of the Great Lakes. Lake Michigan is the only one entirely inside the U.S., while Superior, Huron, and Erie all spill over into Canada. Michigan is proof that even states can have identity crises. Number 4. Europe sometimes relies on history when naming its towns and cities. American towns, they just lean into the weird. Truth or Consequences, New Mexico got its name in 1950 after a radio show dared a town to adopt the title. Y Arizona was named for a Y-shaped highway intersection. And that's just scratching the surface. There's also places like Intercourse, Pennsylvania, and Accident, Maryland. These names come from puns, local jokes, or marketing gimmicks, and a wicked sense of humor. Europeans, used to towns named after saints, monarchs, or thousand-year-old landmarks, sometimes look at a US map and wonder if half the country was named by stand-up comedians. The UK might not be too surprised, though. Number 3. Every US state is divided into counties, except Louisiana. Here, they're called parishes. The name dates back to French and Spanish colonial days when the Catholic Church drew the lines. And when Louisiana joined the US in 1812, it just shrugged, said meh, and kept them. That old quirk still shapes Louisiana's law, politics, and culture today. In Europe, a parish usually means Sunday service. In Louisiana, it also means jury duty and tax bills. Number 2. In Pennsylvania's Gravity Hill, cars in neutral look like they're rolling uphill. Visitors swear it's magic, or maybe ghosts giving a push. In reality, it's an optical illusion. The horizon, trees, and slope of the road trick your eyes into flipping downhill into uphill. Science explains it, but it still feels eerie. That's why local legends talk about haunted children, restless spirits, or supernatural forces at work. These gravity hills pop up across the US, turning into quirky roadside attractions where road trippers stop to test their cars. They exist in Europe too, but they rarely make it onto tourist maps. In America, they get their own parking lot and a gift shop. And finally, number 1. San Francisco's geography stirs up non-stop weather drama. Cold, wet air off the Pacific gets funneled into the bay, draping the city in fog that clings to bridges and hills almost year-round. Locals even named it Carl, and naturally, it has its own social media. Europe has misty mornings. San Francisco? Its fog is an influencer. Can't say that about many places. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. Really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MatPack.
It turns out, most of the facts you learned in geography class, and might still believe, are just straight up wrong. For example, did you know that most penguins actually live in a desert? Or that there's a mountain taller than Mount Everest? Here are 50 facts about geography that almost everyone gets wrong. Number 50. The highest mountain in the world. Since the 1950s, 4,000 people have successfully scaled Mount Everest, and at least 300 more have died trying. As the world's tallest mountain, the so-called Jewel of the Himalayas is considered the final boss for mountaineers all over the world. But what if we told you that Everest isn't actually the tallest mountain on Earth? That honor actually goes to Mauna Kea, a dormant volcano in the Hawaiian Islands. Mauna Kea's height from base to tip is 33,500 feet, or just over 10,200 meters tall, which is almost 4,500 feet or 1,400 meters taller than Everest. The only reason this fact isn't more commonly recognized is that most of Mauna Kea's height is underwater. It's probably a little harder to climb a mountain when you have to start at the bottom of the ocean. Number 49. Despite being the highest point above sea level, Everest isn't the closest point on the Earth to outer space either. That honor actually goes to Mount Chimborazo, a volcano located in Ecuador in the Andes mountain range. While Earth is spherical, it isn't a perfect sphere, and it's a little bit wider around the middle than it is at the top or bottom. So, since Mount Chimborazo is basically right on the equator, its peak sticks out further into space than either Everest or Mauna Kea, without actually being taller than either. Just goes to show that size is relative. Number 48. This one might seem a little obvious to some of you, but we might as well get it out of the way early. Africa is a continent, not a country. It's one of the most culturally and geographically diverse continents on Earth. Africa is made up of 54 countries and is home to approximately 2,000 spoken languages. Number 47. What country's flag is the Union Jack? Did you say Great Britain? Most people do, but most people would be wrong. The Union Jack is the flag of the United Kingdom. Although plenty of people outside the UK use the words Great Britain and United Kingdom interchangeably, only United Kingdom is the correct name. Great Britain is actually the name of the island that the countries of Scotland, England, and Wales are located on, which makes sense because it's the biggest island in the British Isles archipelago. Number 46. Africa is thought of as a continent located mostly in the southern hemisphere, but that isn't quite true. Almost 2/3 of Africa lies above the equator, placing the majority of the continent in the northern hemisphere. This means that countries like Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, and even parts of Nigeria and Kenya are all situated north of the equator. Number 45. Speaking of really big things, the Great Wall of China, it's pretty big. This ancient fortification used to mark the northern border of Imperial China, and at 4,500 miles or 7,200 kilometers long, it's the only man-made object that can be seen from the moon. Or is it? Turns out it isn't, at least not most of the time. It's only visible from low orbit, in very specific lighting and weather conditions, since from space, the materials the wall was constructed from are hard to differentiate from the surrounding forests. This myth dates back to before people had even been to the moon. The claim was first made in a Ripley's Believe It or Not cartoon, all the way back in 1932. Number 44. The Statue of Liberty might be the most famous icon of New York City, but it's not actually located in New York at all. It's actually located on the New Jersey side of the Hudson River. Despite this, in 1987, the Supreme Court ruled to make the statue officially part of New York City. Number 43. Staying in America, you might think that Kansas City is in Kansas, right? Well, not exactly. Kansas City is located right on the border between the states of Kansas and Missouri, and is technically split into two cities, Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas. Number 42. What country do Dutch people come from? If you said the Netherlands, you're correct. If you said Holland, you're also correct, but not for the reason you might think. Holland isn't a country. It's actually a province within the country of the Netherlands, which is home to the country's biggest city, Amsterdam, and its seat of government, The Hague. Most Dutch people don't care when people mistakenly call the whole country Holland, but some, particularly from the west of the Netherlands, find it really annoying. So make sure you get it right next time you meet a Dutch person. Number 41. If you look at a map of the United States, you might think that Maine, located in the Northeast, is the easternmost state in the country. But that technically isn't true. Due to the fact that the Earth is round, the honor actually goes to Amatignac Island, located in the Aleutian Islands of Alaska. Amatignac Island is located in the Bering Sea, between the US and Russia. It falls over the 180th meridian, which is the line that divides the eastern and western hemispheres. This means the island is so far west, it's looped back around to being east again. Number 40. It's pretty well known by now that Iceland is green and Greenland is covered in ice. It's often been repeated that the Vikings named the islands that way to keep other people from settling on the one that had the better soil for farming. Well, as a matter of fact, that's a myth. And the reason Iceland is named Iceland is because of its icy fjords. However, according to the Viking sagas, Greenland was actually named Greenland to make it sound more appealing to settlers after it was colonized by Eric the Red in the Middle Ages. Number 39. When you think about Australian cities, you probably picture Sydney's iconic Opera House and Harbour Bridge. Since it's such an iconic city, it'd be easy to make the assumption that it's the nation's capital, but you'd be mistaken. While Sydney is the most populous city in the country, the actual capital is Canberra, located a few hours south of Sydney in the Australian Capital Territory. The city was made the capital in 1913 after years of dispute over whether Australia's capital should be Sydney or Melbourne. Canberra was a compromise, as it's roughly halfway between the two larger cities. Number 38. Speaking of capitals, most people think that Lagos is the capital of Nigeria. This was true up until 1991, when the Nigerian government decided to move it to the smaller city of Abuja in the center of the country. Lagos is still the largest city in Nigeria, though, with an estimated population of over 21 million, as it's also the most populous city in Africa. This is probably why many people around the world still think of it as the nation's capital. Number 37. Toronto isn't the capital of Canada either. That would actually be Ottawa, another city in the province of Ontario. Ottawa is home to Canada's Parliament, its Supreme Court, and the home of the Prime Minister. It's also home to a large number of universities and has the highest proportion of university-educated residents of any Canadian city. Number 36. Many people think that Cape Town is the capital of South Africa, and that would be wrong. And it isn't Johannesburg either. South Africa actually has two capital cities, as a matter of fact. The administrative capital is located in Pretoria, while the judicial capital is in a city called Bloemfontein. Number 35. Still on the subject of capitals, Geneva isn't the capital of Switzerland, and neither is Zurich. The capital is actually Bern, which is only the country's fifth largest city. In all of these cases, it just goes to show you that the largest city in any given country isn't always its capital. In fact, it seems like in most cases, it usually isn't. Number 34. On Mercator projection maps, Greenland appears to be the same size as Africa. In reality, Africa is huge, covering over 11 million square miles of the Earth's surface. In contrast, Greenland is only about as big as the Democratic Republic of the Congo, covering around 830 square miles, or about 2.15 million square kilometers. Number 33. Madagascar and Great Britain appear to be the same size as well, but Madagascar is actually twice the size of Great Britain. Madagascar has a surface area of 228,000 square miles, or just shy of 600,000 square kilometers. Number 32. On maps, Alaska appears huge, about the same size as Brazil and Australia. In reality, Australia is 4 times the size of Alaska, and Brazil is nearly 5 times the size of Alaska. In general, the nature of this cylindrical projection distorts the size of countries as they get closer to the poles. This is why Greenland, Alaska, Europe, Canada, and Antarctica look huge, while Africa, Mexico, and Asia seem tiny. This has led to some criticism against the use of Mercator projections in educational atlases, as critics argue it subconsciously trains students in Western countries to think of America and Europe as more important than countries south of the equator. Number 31. Russia and Turkey are two countries that exist on both Europe and Asia. But despite what you might have heard, they aren't the only countries to exist on two continents at once. There's also Egypt, which is mostly in Africa but partially in Asia, where it shares borders with Palestine and Israel. Many countries that share borders with Russia and Turkey also exist on both Asia and Europe. As many geologists agree that the Caucasus watershed is the border between Europe and Asia, that also means that Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Kazakhstan all cover both continents. Number 30. America's Mississippi River is often called the Mighty Mississippi and is the longest river in North America. However, judging the length of a river isn't always an exact science. So while the Mississippi River is the largest river in North America by volume, it isn't actually the longest. The longest river in North America is in fact the Missouri River, which is longer than the Mighty Mississippi by just a single mile. Number 29. When you picture a desert, you probably imagine sand, hot sun, and maybe some cactuses and a few camels walking around. But what about penguins? Antarctica is considered a desert. Turns out, the only qualifiers for what a desert is are a lack of plants and very low average rainfall. Antarctica has actually only seen 0.4 inches or about a centimeter of rain in the past 30 years. Not only is Antarctica a desert, it's also the world's largest desert, dwarfing the size of Africa's Sahara Desert at 5 million square miles, or about 14 million square kilometers. Number 28. Did you know that the Sahara Desert isn't even the second largest desert on Earth? It actually only ranks number 1 for size if you only count hot deserts. The second largest desert is the Arctic Desert, which covers the island groups of Svalbard, Franz Josef Island, Severnaya Island, and Severnaya Zemlya in the Arctic Ocean. Collectively, it covers an area of 62,300 square miles, or about 161,400 square kilometers. Even though these islands are surrounded by water, they still count as a desert because, like Antarctica, they see very little rainfall and are home to very few plants. Number 27. When you were a kid playing in the backyard, did you ever imagine you were digging a tunnel to China? It's a common fantasy among bored kids with shovels, especially in America, which is China's antipode, a fancy geographical term that refers to 2 points that would be exactly opposite each other on a globe. Well, even if your dad's gardening shovel was strong enough to dig through the Earth's core, you wouldn't find China on the other side. Looking at the latitude and longitude of a few major cities in each country, China's actual opposite is South America, while America's is the Indian Ocean. Number 26. It's a common belief that water always drains counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere and clockwise in the southern hemisphere, a supposed telltale sign you've crossed the equator. This myth is often tied to the Coriolis force, which describes how Earth's rotation affects the path of moving objects. It's the same principle that helps shape weather patterns like cyclones. Because Earth is tilted and rotating, the Coriolis force does vary between the hemispheres, but its effects are only noticeable on a large scale, like in ocean currents or atmospheric systems. But in small amounts, like toilets or sinks, it's practically impossible to notice. So in short, no, the toilets in Australia don't flush the opposite direction. Number 25. Antarctica is the least populated continent on Earth, so a lot of people believe it has no time zones. After all, who would be using them? The penguins? Nah. But actually, technically speaking, Antarctica sits across every single time zone, which does make sense considering the fact that it's a very big continent. While some Antarctic research bases choose to set things to the time zone of their supply country, there are 9 officially recognized time zones on the frozen continent. Number 24. One of the most famous roads in the United States is Route 66, which was established in 1926 and runs from Chicago, Illinois, all the way to Los Angeles, California. It was a vital route for people looking to move west in the Great Depression, and it's been immortalized in movies, TV shows, and pop music for almost as long as it's been around. Most people think of it as the longest highway in America, but its length actually pales in comparison to the I-90, which was built in 1956 and runs from Boston, Massachusetts to Seattle, Washington. We can only guess that more people don't know this fact because, well, Get Your Kicks on I-90 doesn't quite sound as catchy. Number 23. Christopher Columbus is a pretty controversial figure for a lot of reasons. While some Americans today see him as a heroic explorer, in his own time, he was known for abusing his crew members and even beheading his slaves if they disobeyed him. But regardless of what you think the truth about him is, there's one thing we should all be able to agree on. He didn't discover that the Earth was round. While people in Columbus's time still believed the Earth was the center of the solar system, most people understood that the Earth was round. This was common knowledge even as far back as ancient Greece. The idea that people in the Middle Ages thought the world was flat is a misconception that started sometime in the 1800s. Number 22. Australia is a dream vacation for a lot of people, especially for those who love extreme sports. The island nation boasts great beaches for surfing and rocky wilderness perfect for dirt biking and rock climbing. But we bet you didn't know that it's also a great place for skiing. Despite having the nickname of the Sunburnt Country, it does actually snow in some parts of Australia. It's almost unheard of at sea level, but at higher elevations in places like Tasmania and in the mountains along the country's east coast, snow falls regularly in the winter, which for the southern hemisphere is between June and August. Some years have seen a collective 118 inches 300 centimeters of snowfall. Due to this, skiing is actually a surprisingly popular sport in Australia, and the country has even produced a few Olympic gold medalists in the sport. Number 21. If someone told you that Florida has the longest coastline of any US state, you'd probably believe it, right? After all, almost the whole state is surrounded by water. But you'd be wrong, and you'd be making the same mistake as a lot of people, forgetting about Alaska. Alaska is also surrounded by a whole lot of ocean, and its area is significantly larger than Florida. Florida's coastline is about 1,350 miles, or about 2,200 kilometers long, which is pretty impressive until you hear that Alaska has a coastline that measures over twice that length at 6,640 miles, or 10,680 kilometers. Number 20. Speaking of Florida, it's not the USA's southernmost state either. Well, technically, it was until the United States took over and annexed Hawaii in the 1950s. Key West, Florida might be the southernmost point in the continental US, but Hawaii reaches the 21st latitude. At only 1,460 miles or 2,300 kilometers north of the equator, it's the closest any US territory gets to being in the southern hemisphere. Number 19. Staying within the US, it used to be true that Alaska had the lowest population of any US state, which makes sense given how so much of it is frozen for part of the year and can only be accessed by seaplane. But as recently as 2016, this had changed. It turns out there are two places that people want to live in less than Alaska. Wyoming has the lowest population of any US state, with around 587,000 residents, and Vermont is the second lowest, with a population of 648,000. Alaska, in contrast, has a population of 740,000. Number 18. If you ask most people in the West what country Kashmir is in, they'd probably guess India. The real answer is a little more complicated than that. So complicated, in fact, that there have been wars started over it. Prior to 1820, the region was under Shi rule, but after the First Anglo-Shi War, Kashmir was surrendered to the British, who controlled the area until the partition of India in 1947. Since then, it's been a disputed territory, with China, India, and Pakistan all holding claims to the region. India controls about half of Kashmir, which comprises the provinces of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. These states were formerly one state until they were split in August of 2019. The remaining third of the Kashmir region is controlled by Pakistan, and their section is divided into the provinces of Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. Number 17. In 1968, the disaster movie Krakatoa East of Java depicted the 1883 Krakatoa eruption, one of the most devastating volcanic eruptions in recorded history. The eruption was 13,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, and was so loud that people heard it thousands of miles away in Alice Springs, Australia. But even though the movie was based on a true story, the title wasn't very accurate. Krakatoa is actually to the west of Java. The film's producers knew that, they just thought east sounded more dramatic. However, the movie was re-released in 1970 as just Volcano, so at least they did their due diligence and removed that crucial bit of misinformation. Number 16. The Matterhorn might be one of Europe's most famous mountains, but it doesn't mean it's the tallest. In fact, the Matterhorn doesn't even rank in the top 10, and it's not even the tallest mountain in the Alps, or even the tallest mountain in Switzerland. The tallest mountain in Europe is Mount Elbrus in Russia, which is over 18,500 feet or 5,600 meters tall. The highest point in the Alps is Mont Blanc at almost 16,800 feet, or about 5,100 meters tall. The tallest mountain in Switzerland is Dufourspitze, standing at nearly 15,200 feet, or about 4,600 meters tall. Number 15. Another great icon that isn't actually quite as iconic as you might have thought is the Golden Gate Bridge. Due to its notoriety, plenty of people believe that it's the longest suspension bridge in the world. While it might have been when it was built in 1937, today it's actually only the 21st longest suspension bridge in the world. The longest suspension bridge on Earth is actually the 1915 Çanakkale Bridge, which goes across the Dardanelles in Turkey. This bridge is over 6,600 feet or 2,000 meters long and was built in 2022. Prior to 2022, the suspension bridge was the Akashi Kaikyo Bridge in Japan, which is almost 6,500 feet or just shy of 2,000 meters long. Number 14. You might find it annoying to change the clocks forward and backwards for daylight saving times, but unfortunately, it's just something everyone has to do in the US. Or maybe not everyone. You might have assumed that every state in the US uses daylight savings time, but there are plenty of places that don't. Hawaii, for one example, as well as Arizona. Despite Arizona not recognizing daylight savings, the Navajo Nation, which is partially located in Arizona, does change their clocks. And in Australia, only about half the states recognize daylight savings time, meaning there are parts of the year where two states that are normally in the same time zone are suddenly an hour apart. So if you're ever in Arizona or traveling across state lines in Australia, make sure to double-check all of your bus schedules. Number 13. Most of us are aware that the North Pole isn't a country. But if you had to guess what country is actually the closest to reaching the North Pole, you'd probably guess Norway. Specifically, a lot of people believe that the closest land to the North Pole is the Svalbard archipelago. As a matter of fact, the closest land to the North Pole is actually Kaffeklubben Island on Greenland, and the closest permanent human settlement being the town of Alert on Ellesmere Island, Canada. So if you're planning any visits to Santa this year, those two places would probably be your best starting point. Number 12. From the freezing Arctic to the sweltering desert, here's another fact about the Sahara. The popular perception of the Sahara Desert is one of endless rolling dunes of sand. However, most of the Sahara is made up of rocks, not sand. Sand actually only makes up about 30% of the Sahara, with the remaining 70% being rock and gravel. The terrain of the Sahara is actually surprisingly diverse, made up of a mix of sand dunes, salt flats, gravel plains, plateaus, mountains, and valleys. Goes to show, even the most desolate of environments can hold some surprises. Number 11. The Cape of Good Hope is a rocky headland located on the Atlantic side of the Cape Peninsula in South Africa. It's pretty far south, but contrary to popular belief, it isn't the southernmost point in Africa. This belief comes from another geographical misconception, that the Cape is the dividing point between the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. The southernmost point in Africa is actually 90 miles 150 kilometers east-southeast of the Cape of Good Hope, at a spot called Cape Agulhas. This is also the point where the currents of the Atlantic and Indian Oceans actually meet each other. Number 10. You've probably heard at least one person use the term third world countries to refer to countries in the global south before. And while most people use that phrase to refer to countries that are considered poor and underdeveloped, the term actually has nothing to do with a country's GDP or general quality of life. The terms First World and Third World actually originated during the Cold War. First World countries were the ones aligned with capitalism, and Second World were the ones aligned with communism, with the Third World countries being the ones that weren't affiliated either way. Now that the Cold War is over, we don't really need to talk about Second World countries, but the other two are still sometimes used to this day. Number 9. If you were to play a word association game with different countries around the world, most people would probably associate Somalia with the word pirates. But since 2013, instances of piracy have actually gone down in the ocean around Somalia. It's actually far more likely that you'll encounter pirates in the waters off of Southeast Asia, with the Strait of Malacca being a particular hotspot. Number 8. Did you know that rivers don't always flow north to south? It sounds crazy. If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. Even though we tend to think of north as up and south as down, that's not the case. The force of gravity pushes down from the sky towards the center of the Earth, regardless of where north and south are, and the varying elevations of the Earth's surface means that rivers can flow downhill in any cardinal direction. Plenty of rivers flow south to north, including the Nile, the Rhine, and the Orinoco. Number 7. When you look at a picture of the pyramids of Giza, you probably imagine that they're completely removed from modern civilization. But that's just a misconception fueled by centuries of well-cropped photographs and movies filmed on sound stages. The truth is, if you look at the pyramids from another angle, you'd be able to see that they're actually right next to the city of Cairo. It's relatively easy to visit the pyramids from Cairo, which is why guided tours of these beautiful monuments are so popular with people visiting Egypt from overseas. Sorry to ruin the mystique for you. Number 6. Australia might look like an island, but it technically can't be considered one, because by definition, an island is an unconnected landmass that is smaller than a continent. So, because Australia is a continent as well as a country, it can't be an island. So, the largest island in the world is actually Greenland, which has an area of over 836,000 square miles, or 2.1 million square kilometers. This is much smaller than Australia, which is 2.9 million square miles, or 7.5 million square kilometers in total area. That makes it over twice the size of Greenland. Number 5. Greenland may be an island, but it isn't a country. It's partially autonomous and self-governing, but it's still a constituent territory of the Kingdom of Denmark. Number 4. Mandarin is the most commonly spoken native language on Earth, and because at this point most people worldwide have picked up at least some English from American movies and TV, you might assume that the second most common language is English. It's actually Spanish. Worldwide, it's estimated that 488 million people speak Spanish as a first language, compared to only 400 million native English speakers worldwide. Number 3. If you know one thing about English weather, it's probably that it's miserable. Outside of the UK, people's perception of England is one of cloudy skies, fog, wet pavement, and lots of stuffy businessmen walking around London carrying big umbrellas. But like just about everything you see in movies, you have to take this mental image with a grain of salt. England's major cities actually don't get significantly more rain than other European cities. Paris actually sees more rainfall on average than London. Leeds is the rainiest city in England with about 40 inches 102 centimeters of rain per year, but it still isn't as wet as Zurich, which gets 41 inches or 105 centimeters of rain per year. Number 2. Americans like to refer to Mexico as being south of the border, but in reality, it would be more accurate to say west of the border. The Texas-Mexico border is actually to the state's west, and it turns out that Mexico isn't actually that far south. 11 U.S. states have land that extends further south than the northern parts of Mexico. And geographically speaking, Mexico is part of the continent of North America, not South America, as many people seem to think. And finally, fact number 1. In terms of geography, Afghanistan is not considered part of the Middle East. While it is a predominantly Muslim country like most of the countries in the Middle East, culturally it has a lot more in common with South Asian countries like India and Nepal than it does with Iraq or Yemen.
Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. Really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MatPack. Did you know that Hawaii is not in North America? Or that you've been lied to about what you can and can't see from space? Or how about this? What if we told you you may be wrong about how many continents exist in the world? Today, we'll dive deep into misinformation and flat-out wrong facts about geography that have been floating around for a long time. Here's 50 fake geography facts that everyone believes. So, let's start with fact number 50. Antarctica and the South Pole are not the same thing. Many people use the names Antarctica and South Pole almost interchangeably. However, they're not the same thing. Antarctica is one of the 7, well, maybe not actually 7 as you'll soon see, continents in the world, located at the bottom of the planet. and 7 countries lay claim to territory within it. The South Pole is within Antarctica, but it's not the entire landmass. It's the southernmost point of the Earth, the magnetic pole around which the Earth spins. Fact number 49. There are actually 4 South Poles. Scratch that. Apparently, a lot of what we know about the South Pole is incorrect, including the fact that there's not just one. There's the geographic South Pole, the point where the Earth's axis meets the crust, the geomagnetic South Pole, where the Earth's geomagnetic field intersects the Earth's surface, which is not the same place as the axis, the magnetic South Pole, where the magnetic field intersects the crust, and the inaccessible South Pole, the furthest place on Antarctica from the shoreline. Fact number 48. You can't see the Great Wall of China from space. Everyone knows there's only one man-made structure you can see from space, the Great Wall of China, except you can't. In fact, you can't see any man-made structure from space with the naked eye. So, how did this rumor get started? Well, most likely because the International Space Station, the ISS, shared images of the Great Wall of China taken from space. However, those images were taken with a powerful zoom lens. The astronauts couldn't see the wall otherwise. Even using the zoom lens, structures like the Houston Airport are visible way before the Great Wall, since the wall is very long but very thin, and also blends into the surrounding area due to its color and texture. Fact number 47. Greenland is much smaller than Africa. Most people get this fact wrong, and for that, you can thank the Mercator projection most maps use. Not only is Greenland, at around 836,000 square miles, nowhere near Africa in size, it's even smaller than Africa's biggest country, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, at almost 906,000 square miles. Because of the way the projection works, the DRC looks much smaller than it is, while Greenland looks giant. You'll soon see why. In reality, the northern island is 1/8 the size of South America, and 14 times smaller than Africa. And on that note, fact number 46. Africa is much bigger than you think. To understand this, we have to talk more about how Mercator maps work. They essentially flatten out the globe, and were originally used by navigators to plot their course, as it made lines of latitude and longitude exactly parallel. But they fall short when trying to get an accurate idea of landmass size. Land near the poles appears much larger than land near the equator. That becomes obvious when you learn that Africa is 11.7 million square miles, meaning it can fully fit both Russia and Canada, with room left to cram in Iceland, the UK, and all of Scandinavia. Fact number 45. Finland is not part of Scandinavia. Most people look at northern continental Europe as being Scandinavia, but Finland isn't actually part of this region, though it is part of the Nordics. That's because even though Finland borders Sweden and has some cultural similarities, it's linguistically and ethnically different from its Scandinavian neighbors, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish all come from similar Germanic roots, while Finnish comes from a completely separate, less comprehensible language family known as Uralic. Which is why, when you ask Finns to teach you a word in Finnish, most will reply, "Why?" Fact 44. The Nile may not be the longest river in the world. The Nile River, which runs through 11 African countries, is usually considered the longest river in the world. But many scientists and geographers are now disputing this claim. Turns out, mapping a river is harder than you might think. But after a 14-day expedition by Brazilian scientists in 2007, the director of science at the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, Guido Heli, says the case is closed. The Amazon is the longest river, even though it wins by only around 60 miles. It's 4,225 miles long, compared to the Nile's 4,160 miles. While other scientists do dispute this claim, one thing is clear: the Nile is still not the undisputed champion of rivers. Fact number 43. Europe's tallest peak is not Mont Blanc or the Matterhorn. The tallest mountain in Europe, many think, must be one of the most famous ones, perhaps Mont Blanc or the Matterhorn, both of which are located in the Alps. However, neither of those are the tallest, not by a long shot. Mont Blanc is just under 15,800 feet tall, and the Matterhorn is around 14,700 feet tall. The big boy of Europe is Mount Elbrus, located in Russia, reaching up to nearly 18,500 feet in altitude. Many people don't know it, partly because of confusion surrounding where Russia itself actually is, Europe or Asia. But Mount Elbrus is fully in Russia's European side. Speaking of, fact number 42. There is no agreed-upon line between Europe and Asia. If you ask geographers if the countries of the Caucasus, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, sit in Europe or Asia, they will likely answer yes. It turns out there's a lot of confusion on what line divides Europe or Asia, as they share the same landmass. Many cartographers make the Ural Mountains in Russia the eastern border of Europe and Asia, then follow the Emba River in Kazakhstan down to the Caspian Sea. Some cartographers put the line on the border of Kazakhstan instead. Others still put it on the Ural River. Then it continues, either through the Sea of Azov to the Kerch Strait, or south to the port of Baku, and across the Caucasus Mountains and over into Kerch again. In sum, the distinction between Europe and Asia isn't so clear-cut. Fact number 41. Egypt is not completely in Africa. Though most people identify Egypt as a country in Africa, it's not fully within the continent. The Suez Canal separates Asia and Africa, and though Egypt is located mostly in Africa, its famous Sinai Peninsula is on the other side of the canal, and therefore located in Asia. It's far from the only country to be straddling two continents, though. Fact number 40. Part of Kazakhstan is in Europe. This leads us to another interesting tidbit that you might get wrong. According to most, even if not all cartographers, the part of Kazakhstan west of the Emba River is not actually in Asia. Most famous as the home of Borat, Kazakhstan is widely considered an Asian country, but a lot of geographers would put the westernmost regions of it, including the large parts of West Kazakhstan and Adirau, in Europe. And continuing on Europe-Asia confusion, fact number 39, Russia is not European, or Asian for that matter. Depending on where you went to school, you may have learned that Russia is a European country or an Asian country. But the fact is, Russia is not totally European or Asian. Many experts say that its culture and history make it more European, but most of its landmass still lies in Asia. Russia spreads across 11 time zones, yet doesn't have the most in the world, as you'll soon see, across both continents. So most geographers consider it a Eurasian country. Fact number 38. The world doesn't necessarily have 7 continents. If you grew up going to school in an English-speaking country, or most of Europe and Asia, you probably learned that the world has 7 continents. Though this is the most widely accepted model of thinking about world geography, it's not the only one. Depending on where you learned geography, you may think the world only has 5, or even just 4 continents, and those are totally legitimate models as well. Some European countries have a 6-continent model: Africa, America, Antarctica, Asia, Australia/Oceania, and Europe. Other countries teach 5 continents: Africa, Europe, Asia, America, and Oceania, Australia, excluding Antarctica altogether. And yet other people argue that only land masses separated by water should count as continents, meaning there's just 4: Afro-Eurasia, America, Antarctica, and Australia. Fact 37. Holland is not just another name for the Netherlands. Many people call the Netherlands Holland, believing it's just an older name, or perhaps an alternate name for the northwestern European country. But while that may be the case in a few other languages, in English, Holland is actually a region within the Netherlands. 2 of the Netherlands' 12 provinces are called North Holland and South Holland, Noord-Holland and Zuid-Holland. So why did the name of just 2 regions become interchangeable with the country as a whole? Well, that's probably because the country's most populated and famous cities, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague, are all located within these 2 regions. Fact number 36. Great Britain and the United Kingdom are not the same. Does someone have an English accent or a British accent? Many Americans and other outsiders use terms that apply to this island interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. Just for fun, try calling a Scotsman English. See how it goes for you. In the same vein, Great Britain and the United Kingdom do not refer to the same landmass. The United Kingdom is a country made up of 4 separate regions: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Great Britain, on the other hand, refers only to the island that includes England, Scotland, and Wales, leaving out the Emerald Isle entirely. Fact number 35. Iceland is not icy. This mistake is understandable to make. After all, ice is right there in the name. But this false reputation is actually the result of one man's staggering lack of curiosity. In the 9th century, a Norseman by the name of Hrafna Flóki landed on the island, went up a mountain in the West Fjords, and saw ice in the fjord itself. He then decided the land shall be named Iceland and called it a day. However, the coasts of Iceland are pretty ice-free, and even though there are glaciers on the island, most of the country is green. Fact 34, Lagos is not the capital of Nigeria. Even geography nerds get this one wrong. The actual capital of Nigeria is Abuja, so why do so many people think it's Lagos? First off, it used to be the capital, so there's that. But second, Lagos continues to be the biggest city in Nigeria by far and one of the biggest in the world, with an estimated population of 15.5 to 21 million people, compared to Abuja's 4.2 million. However, the capital was moved to Abuja in 1991, partly because Abuja was closer to the center of the country than the coastal Lagos, and also because of an amusement park. That's right, Abuja is near Magic Land Abuja, formerly known as Wonderland, the first amusement park ever built in Nigeria, and officials wanted the capital to be near it. Fact 33. The Sahara Desert is not the world's largest desert. The largest desert in the world is in a place you might not expect, Antarctica. In fact, it is Antarctica itself, as the Antarctic Polar Desert spans 5.5 million square miles over the entire continent. Most people imagine deserts to be hot, dry places devoid of plant life, but that definition is only partly true. Heat has nothing to do with naming some place a desert. According to Webster's dictionary, a desert is classified as arid land with usually sparse vegetation. So, Antarctica absolutely qualifies. Fact number 32, the Sahara is also not the world's driest desert. You know what, maybe the Sahara isn't as impressive as we've all been led to believe. Turns out, it's not the world's largest desert, and believe it or not, it's not even that dry. At least, it's not compared to the Atacama Desert in Chile. Outside of the poles, the Atacama Desert is the driest place on Earth, receiving less than 0.04 inches or 1 millimeter of precipitation per year. Some parts of the desert haven't seen water in over 500 years. That means that the last time it rained was a few years after Columbus landed in the New World. A man who has one of the craziest fake geography facts associated with him, as you'll soon see. In comparison, the Sahara Desert gets an average of 3 inches a year, a positive deluge compared to the Atacama. Fact 31. Deserts aren't necessarily sandy. We've already established that deserts can be icy, large landmasses like Antarctica, but even deserts with hot climates aren't necessarily full of sand and dunes. People just think so because most photos of deserts feature miles of endless photogenic dunes. Rocky scrubland is rarely as pretty to photograph and share with the world. But some, like the Atacama we just mentioned, have mostly rocky or stony terrain. Deserts around the world can also feature salt flats and other non-sandy landscapes. As long as they're arid, they're still deserts. Fact 30. Everest is not the tallest mountain in the world. Turns out, some geography facts aren't really straightforward. Depending on how you measure it, Everest is not the tallest mountain in the world, though it is the tallest when measuring the height difference from sea level, around 29,000 feet. 2 other mountains beat it by other measurements. The first is Mauna Kea, which is taller than Everest measured from base to tip, though a lot of it is underwater. The other one, which fewer people know about, is Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador. Despite Chimborazo being nearly 8,500 feet lower than Everest, its location on the equatorial bulge means its summit sits almost 4,000 miles from the Earth's center. That's 1.3 miles more than Everest, making Chimborazo closer to space. Number 29. The Earth is not a sphere. Globes usually depict the Earth as a perfect sphere. However, that's not actually our planet's shape. The Earth is an oblate spheroid, or ellipsoid, meaning it's slightly flatter at the poles. That happens mostly because of the planet's rotation. The force of it causes the ends near its axis to flatten. Actually, the shape is continuing to slowly change over time, but not in any drastic ways. However, most globes are still perfectly round, just because it's easier to depict the Earth that way for educational purposes. Fact 28. Most of Canada's population lives near its southern border, which is why several major Canadian cities, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Montreal, and of course, Toronto, are within 100 miles of the US-Canadian border. Though Toronto is Canada's most populated and well-known city, it isn't actually the capital of Canada. That would be Ottawa. The reason Queen Victoria made it the country's capital in 1857 is because it was in a location that could be easily defended between Quebec and Ontario. And at the time, those were the Canadian colony's only two provinces. Fact 27. Geneva is not the Swiss capital. Though it's famous for things like chocolate, watches, and conventions on human rights, Geneva is not actually the Swiss capital. In 1848, the Swiss parliament voted to make Bern the capital, to avoid giving too much power to the country's economic powerhouse, Zurich. So if Bern is the capital and Zurich is the moneymaker, why do so many people think Geneva is the capital? Well, that's probably because many international bodies, like the UN and the Red Cross, have their European headquarters in Geneva, making it the Swiss city most referenced in news and media. Fact 26. Antarctica isn't as big as you think. Though Antarctica may look massive on a map, it's smaller than most people think. In fact, you can only fit the US and Mexico inside it before you run out of room. But since the Mercator map disproportionately distorts countries by the poles, it makes sense that it would distort one continent on a pole the most. Fact 25. The Mississippi is not the longest river in the US. Though the Mississippi River is one of the US's most, if not the most important commercial waterway, as it flows through almost the entire country from north to south, it's actually not the longest river in the US. That would be the Missouri River, which is a tributary of the Mississippi and yet 200 miles longer. The US Geological Survey lists the Missouri as 2,540 miles long, and the Mississippi River as 2,340 miles long. Fact 24. South Africa actually has 3 capitals, and none of them are Johannesburg. We can't blame people for making this particular mistake, as South Africa's capital situation is pretty unique. Since Johannesburg has the biggest urban population in South Africa, many people think it's the capital. But in fact, South Africa has 3 capitals divided between the legislative capital in Cape Town, the judicial capital in Bloemfontein, and the executive capital in Pretoria. The country divided the capitals in 1910 when the Union of South Africa was formed. Pretoria and Bloemfontein had both already been capitals of the previous Boer provinces, the Orange Free State and Transvaal, and a parliament had existed in Cape Town since colonial times, so it just made sense to make it a legislative capital. Fact number 23. Maine is not the US's easternmost state. Looking at a map of the US, this fact seems insane. How can Maine not be the easternmost state? It's east of everything else. But due to the weird division of the eastern and western hemispheres, the westernmost edge of Alaska is actually located in the eastern hemisphere next to Russia. It's called Semisopochny, and you'll find it 10 miles west of the 180th meridian, making it the US's easternmost state. Fact 22. Hawaii is not in North America. Even though Hawaii is part of the United States, it's also the only state that's not actually located in North America. Instead, Hawaii is part of the subregion of Polynesia, which is located in Oceania. Oceania includes, among other areas, Micronesia, Melanesia, Australia, and New Zealand. Hawaii is related to other Pacific islands not only geographically, but culturally and linguistically as well. The Hawaiian languages' closest relatives are the Tahitian, Tongan, Samoan, and Maori languages. Fact 21. Europe is not exactly east of the US. There's a misconception that Europe is pretty much due east of the US. People believe that for 2 reasons. 1, because our mental maps are rarely accurate, and 2, because even in Central and Northern Europe, the weather isn't that extreme. Therefore, people think that the Northern European countries roughly correspond to the Northern US states in latitude. However, London is at 51.5 degrees north latitude, making it further north than the entire contiguous United States, even though it doesn't get nearly as cold there as in Maine or Minnesota in the winter. And a warm, sunny destination like Athens is almost the same latitude as Louisville, Kentucky. You think you may know the reason the weather in Europe is much milder than in North America overall, but it turns out that's also a fake geography fact. Fact number 20. All the way back in 1855, M.F. Maury wrote a book called The Physical Geography of the Sea, which popularized the idea that the Gulf Stream warms up Europe. Since then, it's been confidently repeated in conversations and printed in articles, and yet it's wrong. The much bigger temperature difference has to do with the interaction of atmospheric circulation and the Atlantic Ocean's seasonal storage and release of heat, not the Gulf Stream itself, which does play a minor part. Fact number 19. The world actually has 5 oceans. When most people are asked to name the world's oceans, they list the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian, and the Arctic Oceans. However, there's another ocean out there that most people forget, partly because it's the newest one on the list, the Southern Ocean. It's not a small one either. It covers 10 to 15% of the world's ocean mass. It surrounds Antarctica, below 60 degrees latitude. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, established the existence of the Southern Ocean in 1999, and it was used in official documentation. However, the National Geographic Society didn't officially recognize the Southern Ocean until June of 2021. Fact 18. Australia is not the world's biggest island. Though it's sometimes called the island continent, Australia isn't considered an island by most geographers, who think of continents and islands as separate things. According to Britannica, the definition of an island is a landmass entirely surrounded by water, and yet also smaller than a continent. Therefore, most geographers consider Greenland to be the biggest island in the world. Oh, and speaking of, fact number 17, Greenland is not its own country. Though according to most polls, Greenlanders would like it to be independent, Greenland is not, in fact, its own country. It's part of the Kingdom of Denmark, even though Greenland is about 20 times the size of Denmark. However, it only has a population of 57,000, compared to Denmark's 5.95 million. But over the years, Greenland has acquired a lot of autonomy from Denmark, increasingly taking the lead in its own issues, especially domestic policy. However, Denmark still controls Greenland's defense, security, and foreign policy. Fact 16. Most of Africa is actually above the equator. As we said earlier, people generally don't have the best mental maps of the world, which is why one of the biggest geography mistakes people make is thinking that most of Africa lies in the southern hemisphere, when the truth is exactly the opposite. Only 33% of African land is located below the equator. However, more people in Africa live in the southern rather than the northern hemisphere, partly because the Sahara covers a lot of the continent north of the equator, and it's a very sparsely populated place. Fact 15. Lakes are not the biggest source of fresh water. We assume lakes hold most of our freshwater, but it turns out around 3/4 of all our freshwater is locked in ice caps and glaciers. Although a tiny percentage of the Earth's water is fresh to begin with, 97.2% is found in oceans and seas, 2.1% of the world's total water is in glaciers, while less than 1% is in lakes and rivers combined. That means glaciers are not only the largest reservoir of fresh water, but the second largest reservoir of water in total. Fact number 14. The country that spans the most time zones isn't Russia. Given how endlessly long Russia is, you may think that it spans the most time zones in the world, as the country has 11 time zones total, but you would be wrong. The country that actually spans the most time zones is France. With a total of 12 time zones, it beats Russia by 1. You may be confused and looking at a map of Europe right now, but you'd have to look beyond that continent to see all of France, including its many overseas islands and territories. They range from Tahiti in UTC-10 time to Wallis and Futuna in UTC+12 time. When St. Pierre and Miquelon off the coast of Canada observe daylight saving time, it actually increases France's total time zones to 13. Fact number 13. China does not have the world's largest population. Everyone in school learns that China is the country with the biggest population in the world. We all learned that because, well, it was true, at least for a very long time. But if you're going to school today, you'll learn that India has officially replaced China as the most populated country in the world, with 1.46 billion people. The change happened in April of 2023. Even though India has had declining birth rates for a while now, China's population growth is not only slowing down, but actually started to drop, due mostly to the effect of China's one-child policy. Fact number 12. Places in Antarctica do observe different times. A common geography myth is that Antarctica doesn't have time zones. It seems to make sense on some level. The continent is all the way on the southern end of the world. Well, maybe not, as you'll soon find out. But do time zones even count there? While the continent isn't officially divided into time zones, the research stations there do observe different times. However, they don't always make sense geographically. Some research stations observe the time of the country they're closest to, while others observe the time of the country that operates them, to help them follow their suppliers' or head office's working hours. Fact number 11. The North and South Pole are artificial constructs. Okay, hear us out. Even though magnetic poles do naturally exist, which one is north and which one is south is an entirely arbitrary decision that humans made. And they didn't always place the North and South Poles where we do today. Ancient Egypt, for example, had them reversed. But since the majority of the world's landmass and population today sits in the Northern Hemisphere, we put the Northern Hemisphere on top and call the pole on top of it the North Pole. But this has no basis in anything natural. After all, the universe has no cardinal directions, so there's nothing to say that the North Pole is on top compared to the rest of our galaxy. Fact 10. New Zealand is not the closest country to Australia. Australia and New Zealand are always shown next to each other on maps, far removed from the rest of the world in their little corner of the globe. However, next to each other is relative when distances are as large as they are in that part of the world. At its closest distance from Australia, between New Zealand's South Island and Tasmania, New Zealand is around 930 miles away from the country. On the other hand, the coast of Papua New Guinea is only 93 miles away from Australia's northern coast. However, Australia's Saibai Island, located in the Torres Strait, is just under 2.5 miles from Papua New Guinea. Fact 9. Countries on the equator aren't always hot. People tend to believe any place located on the equator is automatically hot, since that's where the sun is strongest. However, this type of thinking fails to take altitude into consideration, and it turns out a lot of places on the equator are pretty high up. Quito, Ecuador, which sits just a hair below the equator at 0 degrees 13 minutes and 12 seconds south, is located at 9,300 feet in altitude. The city's average temperature is a long-sleeve shirt needing 64 degrees Fahrenheit. At the top of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, just 3 degrees below the equator, temperatures plummet to below freezing. In the Andes that run through the equator in Colombia, you can actually find a few glaciers left at the top. Fact number 8. Central American countries are actually part of North America. Many people group the Central American countries south of Mexico as part of South America. Though they are part of Latin America, bearing some similarities with their South American neighbors, mostly Spanish-speaking plus cultural ties, countries like Panama, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Belize, El Salvador, and Costa Rica are still in North America. South America, for those who count the Americas as two separate continents, doesn't start until Colombia. The dividing line between Panama and Colombia is widely considered to be the division between the two continents. Fact number 7. Portugal is not a Mediterranean country. Though Portugal is next to Spain and on the same latitude and same region as other Mediterranean countries, like Italy and Greece, it's not actually a Mediterranean country. No part of Portugal borders the Mediterranean Sea. Instead, it's entirely surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean. The Mediterranean Sea technically ends at the Strait of Gibraltar, which separated Spain from Morocco. Any water west of that, which includes the water south of Portugal, is considered the Atlantic Ocean. Fact number 6. Venice is not the only or even the biggest city of canals. Venice is one of the world's top tourist destinations, partly thanks to its unique design. a city on the water where you can get around via canals rather than roads. However, it's not the world's only or even the biggest city of canals. Two other European cities have more canals than Venice. One is Birmingham, which has 35 miles of canals, more than Venice's 30.7 miles. Though even most Birmingham residents would argue that Venice's canals are the more romantic of the two. Amsterdam beats both cities with 60 miles of canals, making it the most watery city in the world. Fact number 5, the Statue of Liberty isn't in New York, or is it? Surprisingly, the answer is a little muddier than you might think. Though Lady Liberty has long been associated with New York City, an iconic landmark of the Big Apple, it's actually closer to New Jersey. Not only that, it's in New Jersey's territorial waters. However, the island it's on, Liberty Island, is part of New York, and the whole thing is administered on federal land by the National Park Service. So both states end up with a reasonable claim. Fact number 4, you can see Russia from Alaska. There are parts of Alaska from which you can see Russia quite easily. There are 2 islands, called Little Diomedes and Big Diomedes Islands, which are US and Russian owned respectively, that are only separated by a couple of miles. But beyond those islands, there are also inhabited parts of Alaska, namely on Cape Prince of Wales, where you can see Siberia just 50 miles away. Fact number 3, the US isn't bordered by 2 oceans. In school, particularly in the US itself, many people learned that one of the reasons the US is geographically protected from many wars and invasions is because it finds itself with an ocean on either side, the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans. Many students then walk away, thinking the US only borders 2 oceans. But actually, there are 3 oceans that border the US: the Pacific to the west, the Atlantic to the east, and the Arctic Ocean north of Alaska. Fact number 2. There aren't exactly 195 countries in the world. If you're going by unanimously recognized UN countries and observer states, then yes, there are 195 countries in the world. But not everyone agrees on this number, and for that reason, when you're taught how many countries exist in the world, the number could vary widely depending on where you're learning it. There are at least 6 additional countries in the world with partial recognition. These include mostly recognized ones like Kosovo, recognized by over 100 countries, and areas that almost everyone denies, like the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, recognized only by Turkey. And finally, fact number 1. People didn't think the Earth was flat before Columbus. Many schools actually teach that in Columbus's time, people thought the world was flat, and if he tried to sail around it, he would fall right off the edge. But the first person to discover the Earth was round was Aristotle, who lived in the 4th century BC, almost 2 millennia before Columbus set foot on a ship. So no one in Columbus's time thought he was going to slide off the Earth. They just thought he might die from a lack of supplies before reaching Asia, a much more realistic concern, not knowing he was going to hit North America first. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MatPack. Did you know that there's a part of the US that experiences nighttime for months? How about the fact that Kentucky sits on a sea? Or that there's a landmass in the US that's actually expanding? US geography is full of bizarre facts and surprises you would never imagine. So get ready. We're about to explore 50 more insane facts about US geography. Kicking us off with number 50. Florida is home to thousands of sinkholes. The Sunshine State offers so much: golden beaches, diverse wildlife, retirement homes, and of course, Florida Man. But it's also apparently a great place to fall through the surface of the Earth. A substantial part of Florida sits on top of limestone, which is easily dissolved by water. And because of this, several sinkholes have opened up under the surface. These include sinkholes off the coast, like the giant sinkhole 50 miles southwest of Sarasota called the Green Banana. This monster lies around 155 feet under the Gulf of Mexico's surface. Despite the prevalence of sinkholes, Floridians seem to take it in stride, nicknaming Central Florida Sinkhole Valley. Fact 49. You can stand in 4 states at once. At the appropriately named Four Corners Monument, you can do something pretty surreal: stand in 4 states at the same time. This is the only spot in the US where 4 state borders meet: Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah, all thanks to their largely square shapes. Fact number 48. The Rocky Mountains are still growing. The Appalachian Mountains stopped growing around 220 million years ago, but the Rocky Mountains are, geologically speaking, youngsters, only 65 to 35 million years old, and they continue to grow even today. That's why the main mountain range of the US West Coast is much taller than the Appalachian Mountains, with the tallest mountain reaching up to 14,440 feet, while the tallest mountain in Appalachia only reaches up to 6,684 feet. Fact 47. Kentucky is almost evenly split between 2 time zones. Many large states are split into different time zones, but Kentucky is unique because it is practically split down the middle. The western part of the state, including important cities like Bowling Green, sits in the Central Time Zone, while the eastern part of the state sits in Eastern Time, or EST. Next up, Fact 46. The US has the largest island in the largest lake in the largest island in the largest lake in the world. The U.S. side of Lake Superior, the largest of the Great Lakes, includes the Apostle Islands, a group of 22 islands known for kayaking, hiking, and other outdoor adventures in the area, and Isle Royale, the largest island in the lake by far. Isle Royale has several lakes on it, the largest of which is Lake Siskiwit, and that lake has a few tiny islands, the largest of which is Ryan Island. All this is a result of the glacial activity that originally formed the Great Lakes, leaving plenty of bodies of water and islets scattered behind. Fact 45. Nevada has over 600 ghost towns. Nevada has over 600 abandoned towns, many of them boom and bust towns left over from the gold rush and railroad construction heyday of the state. The most famous ghost town by far is Rhyolite, which was founded in 1905 and sits on the eastern border of Death Valley National Park. Fact 44. Minnesota does not have 10,000 lakes. Minnesota is known as the land of 10,000 lakes, but that nickname isn't actually true. In fact, Minnesota has around 11,800 lakes, with some sources claiming over 14,000 throughout the state. That leads us into our next fact, number 43. Minnesota doesn't have the most lakes of any state. Despite its reputation, Minnesota is not the most lake-covered state in the country. That honor goes to Alaska, with a whopping 3.2 million lakes throughout its territory, although only around 3,200 of them have been named. The sheer number of lakes is mostly due to past glacial activity, rainfall, and the current Arctic climate, which causes glaciers and permafrost to melt, creating millions upon millions of lakes. Fact number 42. The US has the only territory in the UTC-12 time zone. In addition to the 50 main states, the US has many territories abroad, mostly in the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean. Most of its territories in the Pacific, with the exception of Guam, fall under the US Minor Outlying Islands. These include Howland and Baker Islands, which have the distinction of being the only landmasses in the world that fall within the rarest time zone on Earth, UTC-12. Though other countries and islands in the area, like Tonga, Fiji, and Samoa, fall within similar longitudes, they've decided to stick with neighboring time zones instead, to facilitate easier communication and working relationships with their neighbors. However, Howland and Baker Islands are uninhabited, functioning mostly as wildlife refuges and nature preserves today. Keeping with the theme of separation, fact number 41. One state capital can't be accessed by road. Juneau, Alaska is surrounded by mountains and glaciers, making driving into it almost impossible. For that reason, people have to get to Juneau by sea or air, making it the only state capital that can't be accessed by road. Okay, technically, Honolulu can't be accessed by road from the rest of the mainland US either, but it does have roads leading to it from the rest of the island, so we won't count it here. Fact number 40. The US-Canada border is the longest undefended border in the world. Maybe it's because of the friendly relations between the two nations, or maybe it's the miles of snow-covered forests and ice-cold lakes acting as a natural barrier. Either way, neither country has felt the need to build much in the way of border defenses. That makes the US-Canada border, which adds up to almost 5,525 miles, the longest undefended border in the world. Fact 39. 10% of the world's freshwater is in Lake Superior. Everyone knows that the Great Lakes are huge, but did you know that Lake Superior, the largest of them all, is so large that 10% of the entire world's freshwater supply is held within it? It's the largest freshwater lake by surface area in the world. It covers 31,700 square miles with an average depth of 483 feet. Fact number 38. The Florida Keys are partly made of coral. The Florida Keys, made up of over 1,700 named islands and many extra minor ones, expand off the southern tip of Florida into the Gulf of Mexico. In addition to being home to North America's only coral reef, the Keys themselves are partly made of coral as well. Specifically, the Upper Keys are made of the remains of ancient coral reefs that thrived during the Pleistocene epoch 125,000 years ago, when sea levels were much higher. Meanwhile, the Lower Keys are mostly made of sandbars. Fact 37. The US had a city larger than London in 1100. The Cahokia Mounds are a popular tourist attraction in Illinois and are the largest pre-Columbian site north of Mexico. They're also the remains of a massive Native American city that was flourishing all the way back in the 12th century. The mounds cover around 4,000 acres, or 1,600 hectares, and based on the findings there, archaeologists estimate the population to have been around 20,000 people in 1100. At that time, the city of London had just over 15,000 people. Details about the civilization, including why it ended up disappearing, remain unknown to this day, though. Fact 36. The Salton Sea was the result of poor construction and led to its abandonment. In 1905, an irrigation canal was being built in the Imperial Valley near the then Salton Sink that had formed thanks to the San Andreas Fault activity in the area. During the construction, the Colorado River breached a shoddy canal, leading to water pouring into the sink, making it the Salton Sea. Though this would soon make it a premier destination within California, the way it was formed would also lead to its downfall. The Salton Sea kept getting replenished by the irrigation runoff in the area, but there was one big problem. The water flowing in had nowhere to go. Over time, it kept depositing salt until the sea became 50% saltier than the ocean. This killed off most of the fish and other living things in the sea, leading to dead animal bodies washing up on shore and a stench that remains to this day. Local hotels had no way to put a positive spin on that, and eventually, the Salton Sea was mostly abandoned. Fact 35. There's only one tropical rainforest in U.S. territory. El Yunque National Forest is on the Caribbean island of Puerto Rico. Most of the mainland U.S., with the exception of the very tip of Florida, doesn't have the climate to support a rainforest, making El Yunque the only tropical rainforest on U.S. territory. Even at a massive 29,000 acres, it's still one of the smallest forests within the U.S. It's also one of the most diverse when it comes to plants and wildlife. That being said, the U.S. does have plenty of temperate rainforests in the Pacific Northwest and Appalachian Mountains, one of the most famous being in Washington's Olympic National Park. Fact 34. Water flows into 3 oceans from one mountain. In Montana's Glacier National Park lies the Triple Divide Peak. Though most water in the U.S. flows toward one ocean, depending on which watershed it's located in, water from the Triple Divide Peak flows into the Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, and even the Arctic Ocean. That's because 3 massive river systems come together at this point. Water can either go into the Mississippi and Missouri rivers, ending up in the Gulf of Mexico, the Columbia River that empties into the Pacific Ocean, or the Saskatchewan River that winds up into Hudson Bay, and eventually the Arctic Ocean. Fact 33. Niagara Falls is not the tallest waterfall in the U.S. The honor of the tallest waterfall in the country goes to Yosemite Falls in Yosemite National Park. Water at the top of the waterfall plunges 2,400 feet toward the base below. Niagara Falls is famous partly because it provides a very scenic view, but mostly because it's the largest waterfall by width and volume. At peak flow, more than 700,000 gallons per second rush towards its base at 25 miles an hour. Number 32. St. Augustine is the oldest continuously inhabited town in the U.S. Spanish explorers founded St. Augustine, Florida in 1565. making it the oldest continuously inhabited town in the US. Older Native American settlements unfortunately can't lay claim to that title, as most of them were forcibly abandoned. Fact number 31. Oklahoma has a panhandle because of slavery. Take a look at a US map, and you might spot something unusual. A narrow strip of land stretching across the top of Texas, but belonging to Oklahoma. This panhandle is just 34 miles wide, making it one of the most distinctive quirks of the state's shape. Originally, it belonged to Texas, who wanted to enter the Union as a slave-owning state. Thanks to the Missouri Compromise, slavery wasn't allowed north of the 36° 30' latitude. So, Texas gave up a small sliver of its northern border for slavery. That land is now known as No Man's Land, and less than 1% of Oklahomans live there. Fact number 30. Cimarron County is the only county to border 4 states. Speaking of the Panhandle, thanks to its odd geography, it's also home to the only state to border 4 other states. Cimarron County, located in the western end of the Oklahoma Panhandle, borders Texas, Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico. It has a population of almost 2,200, so very few people get to experience the ease of traveling to 4 states from there. Fact 29. Allen, South Dakota is the most landlocked point in the Western Hemisphere. Allen, South Dakota is the most inaccessible place by sea in the entire US, 1,025 miles from both the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. Today, it's part of the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in Bennett County. Number 28. Texas is bigger than any country fully in the European continent. Everything's bigger in Texas, including, apparently, the state itself. Excluding Russia, which has most of its landmass in Asia, Texas is bigger than any individual European country fully on the continent itself. The state has an area of over 268,000 square miles. The biggest European country is Ukraine, at an area of almost 233,000 square miles, followed by France at an area of around 210,000 square miles. Fact number 27. Maryland is the only state with no natural lakes. You might think that the dry, desert-covered southwestern states would lack lakes, but no. Maryland is actually the only U.S. state without natural lakes. Lake Haby and Deep Creek Lake, 2 known Maryland lakes, are both man-made. Even Arizona has naturally occurring Mormon Lake and Stoneman Lake, though they occasionally dry up during long droughts. Fact number 26. Vermont was its own country for 14 years. People may think of Texas as the once independent state that also thinks of independence again from time to time, but actually, Vermont was its own country for 14 years. After the start of the Revolutionary War in 1776, Vermont decided it wasn't being treated well by either the British king or the state of New York, so it may as well go in its own direction. It declared itself independent in 1777. The newly formed country had its own currency and its own constitution, one that abolished slavery and gave all free men the right to vote. Though Vermont joined the newly formed United States in 1791, it still references its constitution when passing and enforcing laws today. Fact number 25. New York is south of Rome. It may sound strange, given New York's brisk winters and Rome's sunny reputation, but it's true. Most of Europe is warmed by the Atlantic Current, making European places at the same latitude as US cities significantly warmer. New York is on almost the same latitude as Madrid. That's why, while the average high temperature in Rome in January is 55 degrees Fahrenheit, in New York it's 39 degrees Fahrenheit instead. Fact number 24. Louisiana is losing land to the Gulf of Mexico. Due to increasing water levels and coastline erosion, Louisiana is slowly but steadily losing land to the Gulf of Mexico. And more than you might expect. Scientists estimate that every 100 minutes, Louisiana loses the equivalent of a football field to the Gulf. This is alarming news for everyone who lives in those areas, including the residents of New Orleans and the surrounding regions. One prediction estimates that at this rate, by 2080, substantial parts of southern Louisiana will be underwater completely. Fact 23. Oklahoma has the most tornadoes per capita. Oklahoma gets the not at all wanted distinction of being home to the most tornadoes per square mile than any other state in the US. The state gets around 50 tornadoes every year, most of them in the spring months between March and May, but they can also happen anytime. That's because Oklahoma is right in the middle of Tornado Alley, a stretch in the middle of the country where conditions are ripe for tornadoes to form. It's one of the only such geographic locations in the world, thanks to the clash between cold, dry air moving south from Canada and warm, moist air moving north from the Gulf of Mexico. Fact number 22. The Outer Banks are migrating west. Scientists have observed that the Outer Banks, located on the easternmost edge of North Carolina, are slowly moving west. This is thanks to the fact that the Outer Banks are sandbars that aren't anchored to anything. Every time there's a storm or strong winds, waves will pick up the sand from the lower eastern shores and deposit it further west. Over time, this is literally changing the location of the islands. Fact number 21. Hawaii's Big Island is growing. Some places in the US are steadily losing land, but others are apparently growing. Hawaii's Big Island, the youngest member of the Hawaiian archipelago, has gained around 500 acres of land since 1983. This is due to the island's frequent volcanic activity, as Kilauea and Mauna Loa still erupt from time to time. The lava flows eventually cool down and become new land deposits. This isn't happening with other older Hawaiian islands like Oahu and Kauai because they're no longer actively volcanic, so their shoreline is slowly eroding instead. But the Big Island is determined to live up to its name. Fact 20. Arizona is the only state that contains all 4 US deserts. Well, a part of all 4 of them, at least. The 4 major US deserts are the Great Basin, the Sonoran, the Chihuahuan, and the Mojave Deserts, and all of them come together, unsurprisingly, in one of the US's driest, hottest states. Fact number 19. You can mine for diamonds in Arkansas. People usually associate diamond mines with far-off destinations, but there's a massive diamond mine right here in the US, located in Arkansas. Crater of Diamonds State Park in Murfreesboro is a volcanic site that formed thousands of diamonds over millennia. Not only can you visit the park to learn about its volcanic origins and diamond mining, but you can actually look for diamonds yourself. And the chance of finding one isn't as tiny as you might think. So far, visitors have found over 35,000 diamonds in the park, including the largest diamond ever discovered in the US, a 40.23 carat gem nicknamed Uncle Sam. Fact number 18, and my favorite on this list. Kansas is flatter than a pancake. Literally. There's a lot of jokes about how flat the Midwest is, but some scientists decided to test out exactly how true those jokes were. Geographers from Texas State University and Arizona State University teamed up in 2003 to discover that some parts of Kansas are, quite literally, flatter than your average pancake. Fact 17. 11 states in the US have just one area code. Densely populated cities in the United States have multiple area codes for their phone numbers, out of necessity since they have to distribute numbers to millions and millions of people. On the flip side, 11 states in the US have such small populations that the entire state has only one area code. They include Alaska at 907, Wyoming 307, Delaware 302, New Hampshire 603, Maine 207, North Dakota 701, South Dakota 605, Vermont 802, Montana 406, Hawaii 808, and Rhode Island with 401. Fact number 16. Arizona has one of the best preserved meteor craters on Earth. While the famous meteor that killed the dinosaurs landed in what is today the Gulf of Mexico, meteors have left other craters all over the world. In fact, one of the best preserved meteor craters in the world is located in Arizona. The Beringer Crater was formed over 50,000 years ago and now sits around 40 miles east of Flagstaff. You can walk to the crater's rim, but going into the crater itself is not allowed. Scientists think that the asteroid that formed it was only 98 feet to 164 feet wide, but it hit with such an enormous force that it left a 570-foot deep wound in the Earth's surface. Fact number 15. Utah is home to the largest natural bridge in the US. The US has its fair share of engineering marvels, including iconic bridges like the Golden Gate and the Brooklyn Bridge. However, it's also home to some enormous natural bridges. Fittingly located in Arches National Park, Landscape Arch in Utah spans 290 feet in total. Others claim it extends over 300 feet, but the official measurement maxes out at 290. It's also a relatively thin, delicate-looking arch, only 6 feet wide at its narrowest point. A portion of it actually fell down in the 1990s, making it even thinner, but the arch is still hanging on today. Fact number 14. Only Maine shares a border with exactly one other state. Maine is the only state in the US to share its border with just one other state, New Hampshire. To the north, it borders Canada. If you were to take a road trip through the contiguous 48 states and had to only cross each state once, you would inevitably start or end up in Maine. Fact number 13. Michigan has a floating post office. If you need to send your mail to a ship worker on the Detroit River, you'd better address it to zip code 48222. Known as the only floating zip code in the United States, it belongs to the postal ship J.W. Westcott II. It goes up and down the river, delivering mail to workers on nearby vessels. This is the only floating post office and zip code in the country. Fact number 12. Wisconsin has an official state microbe. Many states have state plants, state mottos, or state birds. But Wisconsin is the only state to have an official state microbe. But for Wisconsin, the microbe Lactococcus lactis is incredibly important to both its population and its economy. That's because Lactococcus lactis is used in cheesemaking, arguably Wisconsin's most important industry. The state is the biggest cheese producer in the US, making 2 to 3.5 billion pounds of cheese every year. And its dairy industry makes up 6.5% of the state's entire economy. Fact 11. One town in the US experiences full polar night. Utqiagvik, formerly known as Barrow, experiences a full 64 days of polar night. From mid-November to mid-January, the sun doesn't rise at all, and the town is bathed in darkness. Between 4,300 and 5,000 people live in Utqiagvik, actually making it the 12th most populated city in Alaska. The population seems to deal with polar night just fine, perhaps because they also have 2 months of full 24/7 summer days to look forward to after that. Fact 10. No one can agree on which state is the most mountainous. Alaska, Colorado, West Virginia, and Nevada all claim to be the most mountainous state in the country. How is it that with all our knowledge of geography today, the winner still can't be decided? Well, it's because each of them is correct in their own way. Alaska claims the title because it has the most mountains of any state, with over 4,000 of them named. But Alaska is also enormous, so a fair amount of it is covered by lowlands as well. Colorado lays claim to the title because, as we said before, it has the highest mean elevation of the US. On the other hand, West Virginia is the only state to be contained within the Appalachian mountain range. However, most of the northwestern part of the state sits on a plateau, and the mountains in West Virginia tend to be much lower than mountains in the west part of the country. Surprisingly, Nevada is the state most densely covered by mountains. Only the Carson Sink and Death Valley can lay claim to being flat. Meanwhile, Nevada has 2,000 named mountains, which may be less overall than Alaska, but way more per capita. Plus, almost everywhere you stand in Nevada, you can see a mountain somewhere in front of you. That makes it the winner, in our opinion. Fact 9. South Carolina has an island full of monkeys where humans aren't allowed. Morgan Island off the state of South Carolina is home to over 4,000 rhesus monkeys. Oh wait, actually, the US government only placed 1,400 of them, but over time, their population expanded. If you want to see the monkeys, however, you'll have to take a boat trip around the island, as only approved researchers are allowed to step foot on the coast. Scientists are afraid of people disturbing or harming the animal population, a thing humans are prone to doing. Fact number 8. Kentucky has a moonbow. Though most people are familiar with rainbows, few know what a moonbow is. Perhaps because the conditions needed to form a moonbow are quite rare. But at Cumberland Falls in Kentucky, the mist at the base of the falls sometimes reflects the light coming off an especially bright and full or nearly full moon. This creates what locals call a moonbow. Fact number 7. Mount Washington recorded the fastest wind speed on Earth. Those who live in New Hampshire know that the hike up Mount Washington is deceptively dangerous and difficult, proven by the many search and rescue missions undertaken there every year. That's partly due to the harsh weather that batters the mountain, which may be why the fastest wind speed ever recorded on Earth was noted here in 1934. On one horrific day, the wind clocked in at 231 miles an hour. To understand just how fast that is, think of the fact that the Porsche 911, one of the world's premier sport cars, tops out at only 204 miles an hour. A skydiver falling headfirst towards the Earth will generally only reach 160 miles an hour. The wind only needs to reach 120 miles an hour to knock you down. So a speed of 230 miles an hour would quite literally throw you off the mountain. Fact number 6. Engineers made the Chicago River flow backwards. In the 19th century, the rapidly expanding town of Chicago had a problem. Though it had a prime location on the Chicago River, the river was actually flowing towards Lake Michigan, which happened to be the city's drinking water supply, and what it was carrying was sewage and waste. One day, William Boldenweck, the head of the sanitary district of Chicago, got an idea. What if he just reversed the river's flow? And he was serious. In 1900, after 8 years, the removals of 42 cubic yards of soil and rock and the construction of a 28-mile-long canal, that's exactly what he did. Fact number 5. Buford had a population of 1 up until 2012. People driving through rural Wyoming would sometimes come across the town of Buford and do a double take when they saw the welcome sign. Buford, population 1, elevation 8,000. The sole resident, Don Salmons, had lived in the area since 1980 with his family. After his wife died in 1992, Salmons decided to buy the town and began operating the Buford Trading Post. His son moved away in 2008, and Salmons eventually closed the store in 2012 and put the town up for auction. Fact number 4. Kansas City has a massive underground complex. Kansas City, Missouri has one of the largest underground business complexes in the world, named Subtropolis. Over 6 million feet of space are carved into the ground for this complex, which sits 150 feet below the city's surface. Today, the complex is mostly used as storage for e-commerce, pharmaceuticals, cars, records, and food distribution, to name a few, so the products can be kept away from exposure to the elements. Fact number 3. You can see the Earth curve at Bonneville Salt Flats. Located in Utah, the Bonneville Salt Flats are so flat, smooth, and never-ending that you can literally see the Earth curve when you look out at them on a clear day. The alien-looking landscape is mostly known for being a place where people set land speed records, thanks to the aforementioned flatness. Fact number 2. One Hawaiian island is closed to the public. Unlike most private islands, Niihau wasn't closed to push locals out. It was preserved to protect them. Niihau has been owned by the Robinson family since 1864. They maintain strict control over who can visit the island to conserve the island's flora, fauna, and the indigenous culture of Niihau as well. The only people allowed on Niihau are native Hawaiian inhabitants, the Robinson family themselves, and invited guests. Finally, fact number 1. The U.S. town of Rough and Ready once declared itself an independent republic. Rough and Ready is located near Sacramento in California. In 1850, frustrated over the mining taxes and taxes on alcohol, it declared its independence from the Union, forming the Great Republic of Rough and Ready. The reason you may not have learned about this in history books is because independence only lasted 3 months. Strangely, until July 4th. Feeling a surge of patriotism on the rest of the country's Independence Day, the citizens of Rough and Ready rejoined the United States. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MatPack.